Good morning. Good morning, everyone. How are you this wonderful morning? Beautiful Bronx weather, right? I'm Jonathan Bowles. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for an Urban Future. It is so wonderful to see you here today. Nearly 350 people signed up for today's event, both in person and via the live stream. So welcome to all of you. Thanks so much for coming out. I know that there was a little bit of a drop-off probably because of the weather, but for all of you that made it here, I know it's been a little difficult outside. So to me, this really shows that Bronx residents are not only passionate about this borough, but also determined to create a better and fairer Bronx, and hungry for good ideas on how to get there. That's really what today's event is about. Concrete ideas for making progress toward a stronger and more equitable Bronx. Before we move forward, I want to extend a very big thank you to Verizon, to April, who's here from Verizon. We would not be here without their generous support. Thank you, Verizon. Also, a big thank you to CUF's amazing staff for putting on today's event. I see Sophia walking down the aisle here. Also, Stephanie and all the team that put this together. Really thank you for their hard work. And thanks to so many of you in the room today, not just for being here on such a crappy day, but for the work that you do. We know in all of our work at the Center for an Urban Future, so many of our reports, we really kind of lean on getting intelligence and ideas and understanding what's happening from people on the ground. And we know how important nonprofits and community organizations are to making this a better city. And so I just want to extend a thank you to all of you for the great work that you do. In case you don't know about the Center for an Urban Future, we are an independent think tank focused on creating a stronger and more inclusive economy in New York and expanding economic opportunity for all New Yorkers. Our research elevates important issues onto the radar of government officials and sparks policy changes and investments that help expand pathways into the middle class and strengthen communities across the 5 boroughs. Just to give you a few examples from the last couple of years, our work at the Center for an Urban Future directly inspired the creation of CUNY Reconnect, a brand new city program that is helping adult New Yorkers who have some college credits but no degree to re-enroll at CUNY and complete their credential. We helped spark the creation of NYC Boss Up, which is an innovative program for supporting aspiring entrepreneurs who live in NYCHA residences. And we helped spark a 5-campus expansion of CUNY 2X Tech, which is an initiative that will help many more CUNY students obtain high-wage tech careers. So that's enough about the Center for an Urban Future. As I was saying before, one of the things I've learned in my years at CUF is that there are so many inspiring New Yorkers in every borough who are on the front lines of strengthening communities and helping people get ahead. Too rarely do our city leaders turn to these incredible local leaders for ideas on how to strengthen our city and address the challenges we face. Last February, my colleagues and I at the Center for an Urban Future did just that. We published a report showcasing policy ideas from 50 of these amazing Bronx-based leaders. We know there's far more than 50 Bronx-based leaders, but for a variety of reasons, we wanted to cap it and put out ideas from 50 different Bronx leaders. We asked each of them to share a single policy idea that would help more Bronx residents get on the path to the middle class, address the affordability crisis, close racial and ethnic opportunity gaps, improve public health, and bolster neighborhoods across the borough. There are some amazingly creative ideas in that report, which is titled 50 Ideas for a Stronger and More Equitable Bronx. If you haven't seen it, I urge you to check it out. You may have seen that we have postcards at the desk today when you arrived. On the back of those postcards is a QR code that links right straight to that report, so check it out. I'm excited because today's event really builds on that report. And today is all about trying to move great ideas for this borough forward. And We have a really exciting agenda on tap today. I hope you'll really enjoy it. It's a little bit different than I think your typical policy event. What we're going to do is we're going to have 3-minute idea pitches from 7 different Bronx-based leaders, each pitching a specific idea for creating a stronger and more equitable borough. We're going to have a fireside chat with Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson. We're going to have 2 panel discussions focusing on ideas for the borough's future, one with 4 Bronx-based community leaders and advocates, and one with 5 of the borough's elected officials. And we'll be taking the mic around the room and asking many of you in the audience for your idea for creating a stronger and more equitable Bronx. So start thinking about your idea, and when we bring around the mics, we'll be there and looking for your idea. Now let's get this started. We're going to kick things off with 4 different idea pitches, with the first one coming from Rocky Bucano. Rocky?
See here, I'm a tall guy, so I got to raise this microphone. Thank you, Jonathan, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rocky Bucano, and I have the privilege of serving as the CEO of the Hip Hop Museum, a space dedicated to preserving and celebrating the global movement of hip hop while inspiring the next generation to embrace creativity, innovation, and cultural pride. Today I'm here to share a story, not just about a museum or a program, but about transformation. In the Bronx, where hip hop was born, countless teens across this borough face daily challenges, violence, absenteeism, and a lack of accessible access to opportunities. But what if I told you that a camera could change their lives? Not just a tool for capturing images, but as a weapon for storytelling, empathy, and change. That's the vision behind My Camera is My Weapon, one of the Hip Hop Museum's most impactful social programs. My Camera is My Weapon provides at-risk teens with a powerful creative outlet, offering them an outlet and an alternative to the dangers of gang involvement and street violence. Through photography and filmmaking, students channel their frustrations into storytelling, using the lens to document the realities of homelessness and give voice to those often ignored by our society. This program not only nurtures their artistic talents, but also instills a sense of purpose and self-worth, showing them that their perspectives matter. By addressing educational disparities and exposing systemic barriers, My Camera is My Weapon equips students with critical thinking skills and the confidence to become advocates for change in their own communities. More than just a program, My Camera is My Weapon is a pathway helping teens reimagine their futures and realize that their stories have the power to inspire, educate, and transform the world around them. This program isn't just about art. It's about building a future. By providing students with professional-grade equipment, editing software, and mentorships from industry leaders, My Camera is My Weapon is laying the foundation for internships, scholarships, and careers in media and the arts. Last summer, students from the Dream Charter School turned their cameras on their own communities, capturing not just the challenges they face, but also the resilience and solutions that often go unseen. They didn't just document their surroundings, they redefined their own narratives. Now imagine the impact if we expand this program. Investing in My Camera is My Weapon means investing in young people, giving them an alternative to violence, a sense of purpose, and a platform to develop real-world skills. Hip-hop itself was born when talented but overlooked youth found a way to express themselves through music. Today, photography and filmmaking offer another, largely untapped pathway to creative expression, empowerment, and opportunity. That's why today I am inviting our city leaders and private sector to join us in the mission to further this program. With $1 million in discretionary funding, we can bring My Camera is My Weapon to 5 borough high schools in 2025 and expand to 10 schools by 2026. This investment isn't just about teaching photography, it's about changing lives, shaping futures, and ensuring that every young person has the opportunity to tell their own story. Together we can turn cameras into instruments of peace, education, and empowerment, one lens, one student, one story at a time. Thank you very much.
I'm not as tall, so I'm lowering. Thank you to the Center for an Urban Future and Mr. Bowles for the invitation and opportunity to be here. Buenos días. Yo me llamo Dr. Anderson Torres. I'm the president and CEO of an amazing not-for-profit organization that's been around for 60 years now, taking home care referrals called RAIN Total Care. Several years ago, while at RAIN, I reflected upon an idea to address two pressing issues in our amazing community: housing scarcity and the social isolation faced by many older adults in New York City. Through home visits in public housing, I saw firsthand how many older adults had outlived their spouses and were left living alone in 2- and 3-bedroom apartments within public housing. These individuals not only had to cope with the emotional impact of loss, but also with their isolation while living alone. This situation is becoming increasingly common in the Bronx, where there are now 200,000 residents aged 65 and above. That's roughly 15% of the borough's population, up from 11% a decade ago. At the same time, there was a growing housing crisis in the city with limited options, affordable options for seniors. It became clear to me that there had to be a way to solve both problems at the same time. That's when I had the idea of matching older adults who were living alone and pairing them in a way that could benefit everyone involved. The idea was simple. Instead of letting these seniors remain isolated or place them in a nursing home, why not connect them with another older adult who was living alone? That would give them the chance to share their space, reduce loneliness, and provide each other with the emotional and practical support needed. It would be a sort of college dorm experience, creating a supportive community where seniors can help each other navigate daily life. Beyond the emotional benefits, this model could also make better use of the available space in our public housing, where 1 in every 4 NYCHA residents today is 62 and above. Those under-occupied 2- and 3-bedroom apartments could be shared by 2 individuals, creating a more efficient use of housing while still giving each person the privacy and the support that they need. Additionally, this approach could optimize the use of home health aides. Instead of sending aides to multiple homes, we could have them serve several individuals in one setting, making it efficient and stretching the scarce resources, limited resources that we have further. I know there are challenges in making this work, such as ensuring compatibility between matched individuals and addressing logistical concerns. I believe this idea has the potential to reduce isolation, make better use of our housing stock, and create a more supportive environment for older adults in our city to thrive in our beloved city, in our beloved Bronx. Ultimately, it's about creating a sense of community where older adults don't have to face the challenges of aging alone. By rethinking how we use our housing and care resources, we can help seniors live with dignity, connection, and the support they need. Let's not forget, we will walk that path shortly. We're aging every second that we're here, and we're doing it gracefully in the company of amazing people. Thank you.
I'm also short. Good morning, buenos dias, and thank you for repping the Bronx today. I'd like to start with two questions. First, when you think of the Bronx, how many of you think of culture? Yeah, birth of hip hop, birth of salsa, and so much more. Second question, who here knows someone, maybe a friend, a neighbor, or even yourself, who had to put aside a dream or a talent to make enough money to survive? Yeah, right? We've all seen it. I'm Sandy Luna. I'm executive director of ID Studio Theater. I'm also an immigrant artist. I'm a mother who lives, works, and dreams in the Bronx. 35% of Bronx residents are immigrants. Many arrive as trained artists, painters, musicians, actors, writers. But when they get here, their art is the first thing they're forced to give up in order to take survival jobs. Also, while navigating an increasingly scary immigration system. This is a crisis. When immigrant artists abandon their craft, we don't just lose individual talents. We lose the representation of cultural values, traditions, and histories that future generations need. We miss the opportunity to create culturally relevant programming that serves other immigrants and the communities we all live in. But here's the thing. Artists can help artists. That's what we do. What if we had a cross-cultural apprenticeship that pairs emerging immigrant artists with established Bronx artists? A 2-month mentorship and funding program that isn't just about the arts, it's also about economic opportunity, cultural equity, and ensuring that the Bronx reflects its people. This initiative would provide stipends for both artists, direct skills sharing, professional development workshops, and legal clinics. This initiative would be strategic investment in Bronx artists, both immigrants and local Bronx ones. To create this program sustainably, we would need to secure public funding from the Borough President's Office, the CLA, the Community Council, tie the arts to the local economic growth by direct partnerships with local businesses, and leverage existing resources by partnering with Bronx arts organizations and the New York Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, and many more. This initiative directly addresses the current political climate of fear by providing stability, empowerment, and economic opportunity for immigrant and local artists, turning fear into resilience, isolation into connection, and vulnerability into agency, which is what we need right now. It would bring us closer to a Bronx where cultural exchange fuels creativity, economic growth, and social progress. And I know we all want that. Thank you.
All right, I might be the smallest one here, so adjusting accordingly. All right, good morning, everybody. Okay, so my name is Sarah Johnson, and I am a very proud former high school science teacher. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm also the CEO of an organization called Teaching Lab. We are a teacher development and coaching nonprofit. We serve over 200 schools in New York City, including in this beautiful borough of the Bronx. Thank you. Yes. So the United States, unfortunately, has a literacy crisis, and so do schools in the Bronx. The most recent data shows that only 35% of students in the Bronx read on grade level, and unfortunately this represents a decline from previous years, and notably it's the lowest literacy rate of all the boroughs in New York City. In some Bronx schools where we work, we'll see 0% of kindergartners and first graders performing on grade level. And as we know, there's hardly a decent paying job in today's economy that doesn't require reading. reading and writing is also really essential for participating in a thriving democracy, which is frankly under threat right now. We're in the schools. We're in the schools daily in the Bronx, and we see kids ready to learn every single day. And because of that, radically, we believe that every single student in the Bronx can and deserves to learn to read. We think that to reverse these literacy rates, we need to develop a multi-year plan so that every single student in the Bronx learns to read, and we cannot stop until the statistics change. There are 4 things that we think require significant and visionary long-term investment. So 1, we believe in teachers. There is not a single teacher that gets up in the morning and says, hey, I want to do a bad job. But we also know from research that teachers need support, and we know that coaching teachers consistently improves teacher practice and student learning. Every single teacher in the Bronx also deserves a coach who is trained in the science of teaching kids how to read. We also know from research that tutoring can accelerate student learning. Since we also have older kids in the Bronx who struggle to read, city leaders should recruit tutors for the kids that are behind and create a tutor-to-teacher pipeline. Again, this needs to be a system-wide strategy, so students enrolled in local CUNY education programs that prepare a large share of our city's teachers, they also need to be trained in the same science-based strategies, and we should provide incentives for those teachers to teach in the Bronx and get the kids the best teachers who need the best teachers the most. Finally, it's not all doom and gloom in the Bronx. There are some schools that have extremely high literacy rates. One is just a mile from here, called LEAD 359. There are also some tech innovations happening in schools that are quite promising. We should study what those principals and schools are doing. We should figure out what works, and we should spread what works to the entire Bronx collective. Admirably and notably, our mayor and our current chancellor, they have invested in an initiative called New York City Reads. It's a citywide initiative that provides evidence-based literacy curriculum and support to schools. But this is going to require deeper and long-term investment that spans across administrations. This is why Bronx leaders and funders, they need to play leadership roles in stewarding this strategy so that it sustains itself. Sometimes we get really discouraged when we're working hard and the stats don't change. But we don't tell doctors to stop working on a cure for cancer just because it's hard. The first step is to really believe that this is possible to achieve. I had a mentor, and she would always say, do not be afraid to fail, but be afraid to succeed at things that don't matter. Let's not be afraid to say it because it's hard. Every single student in the Bronx can read. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Good morning. How about an amazing round of applause for all of those first cohort of pitches? I certainly can identify, as I'm sure you can, with all of them, whether it's gun violence and addressing that, or reading, as mentioned by Sarah Johnson, aging, which I'm trying to do in reverse, but, you know, Dr. Torres, all for it. You know, the cultural aspect that was mentioned by Sandy Luna. My name is April Horton. Thank you so much for making it here today, because I wasn't sure I was going to make it here today. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm truly excited to welcome you all to this important event. It's a fantastic opportunity to partner with the Center for Urban Fellows. Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you both for your leadership, Stephanie and the staff for really bringing this vision to light. Couldn't have happened without you. You've been a great partner along the way for many years. I'd also like to give a shout out to all of the partners, whether it's the Bronx Children's Museum, George Nunez, Rocky, and just everybody who is a stakeholder and who is invested in the Bronx. I grew up here So I certainly am extremely invested in, on behalf of Verizon, I have great joy and pride to partner with great organizations like CUF in this effort to change the narrative of what the Bronx is and what we represent. So it's a fantastic opportunity to partner with the Center for Urban Fellows, an organization that has consistently demonstrated its commitment to advancing equity and progress in the Bronx and beyond. I'm April Horton, Regional Director of Government Affairs at Verizon. And at Verizon, we are incredibly proud to be part of this conversation as we continue our work of fostering connectivity and empowering communities to thrive. As many of you know, the Bronx is a borough of incredible potential, resilience, and diversity. We believe in supporting initiatives that not only enhance connectivity, but also help build the foundations for sustainable economic growth, education, and human prosperity. It's initiatives like today's event that bring people together to create lasting change, and we at Verizon are thrilled to be part of the process. So thank you once again, CUF. We are particularly honored to have with us today someone who embodies the spirit of leadership and commitment to the Bronx. And let's give a round of applause for Vanessa Gibson, our Borough President. Borough President Gibson's leadership has been transformative for the Bronx, and she has consistently prioritized policies that create real opportunities for all Bronxites. Since taking office, she has championed efforts to improve public safety, expand affordable housing, and promote equitable economic development across the borough. Her dedication to community empowerment has made her a tireless advocate for those often left behind in the city's growth. During today's fireside chat, facilitated by CUF's Jonathan Bowles, we'll have the chance to hear directly from Borough President Gibson about her vision for the future of the Bronx. We will explore innovative policies and investments she has already championed, which are bolstering economic opportunity and improving the quality of life for Bronx residents. We'll also dive into CUF's 2024 report, 50 Ideas for a Stronger and More Equitable Bronx, and hear from BP Gibson on what ideas she finds most compelling and how she might look to advance them. The conversation will also touch on broader issues from education and public health to housing and infrastructure. This is an exciting moment for the Bronx, and I know we are all eager to learn more from one of the most dedicated and passionate leaders we have. Thank you again for being here, and I look forward to the insightful discussion that lies ahead. Let's get started.
All right, thanks, April. All right, welcome.
Thank you. Bienvenidos.
Good morning. I got to say that in addition to those amazing words that April shared about you, Borough President, one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you here this morning is that this is an event about ideas, right? We've already seen that. We've had 4 great ideas already shared, but I remember you were a guest speaker at an event we had in Hostos, just across the street about a year and a half ago. And without, I think, any notes, certainly without a prepared speech, you spoke for maybe 15 minutes. And it was like probably the most passionate, energetic, and charismatic kind of like just set of ideas for kind of expanding access to tech careers for Bronx residents. And there was a lot about education and about training. And I was just so struck by just the kind of passion and dedication and just so many good ideas that you shared. And so we wanted to have you back. And I want to ask you about a few things about ideas for the future. But I want to start with, you know, we too rarely talk about there is progress happening citywide and here in the Bronx. And so just really briefly, because this is an event about the future, but tell me, are there a couple of things that you're most excited about where like you are kind of putting ideas out there that are making progress, Borough President?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias, bienvenidos. Thank you so much for coming out today. Even despite the weather, you made the effort to join us. Those who are here in person, those who are joining us virtually, I want to thank Center for Urban Future, Verizon, and everyone for coming out this morning. Such a critical time for us in the Bronx to really come together as thought leaders, as advocates and activists, parents, educators. We are all a part of something great happening in the Bronx. And I always love and appreciate any opportunities to talk about my love of the Bronx, the fact that we're doing amazing work, and also the fact that we have to realize that it is our collective responsibility to shape the narrative of this borough. One of resilience, one of strength, one of overcoming adversity, one of being knocked down many times and still getting back up, and one in which we are just so dedicated and committed to this work. We are driven by our love for the Bronx, which is really rooted in all of the amazing people that have come before all of us, right? And so when Jonathan and Stephanie and the team called, I said, of course, even on an early Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, I'll be there. And I am here, and I am excited. I have so much to share, but of course, I'm always limited by time. But let me just say that major capital projects are happening in the Bronx. And when we talk about economic development, we talk about building generational wealth, we talk about claiming our power as residents of this borough. We are doing just that. I am so proud of the work that we've done in the last 2 years, working with elected officials, council members, on looking at the Metro North expansion in the East Bronx. We have families today that live in transit deserts. They cannot get around, and it's unacceptable. They are forced to drive or find other modes of transportation just to get around. And my predecessor, Ruben Diaz Jr., came up with this incredible partnership with the MTA that would really provide Metro North access to Penn Station, cutting the commute time in half from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. Looking across 4 neighborhoods in the Bronx, they really do not have that transit rich that we know we deserve. So the Co-op City community in Section 5, the Hunts Point community, the Morris Park community, as well as the Parkchester Van Ness, will be getting additional transportation access with the construction of a brand new Metro North station that will be union built. That's a big deal. And it's a $3 billion investment. It's also going to revitalize the commercial corridors that we represent in the East Bronx. 2 of the communities will bring additional housing opportunities. We're very excited about that. And there's millions of dollars in capital investments that we're making in the East Bronx, because we realize that in order to build stable families and transform neighborhoods, you have to invest in the neighborhood's infrastructure. So yes, we have to deal with the traffic, the construction, the noise. We have to deal with storm water issues. We have to deal with coastal resiliency. We have to invest in schools and recreation and community centers and neighborhood partners like libraries and schools. It matters when you are building housing and transportation. You have to look at all of the other components as well. I'm also very excited that earlier this year, we were a part of the announcement by the city, EDC, on announcing the winning bid for the Kingsbridge Armory. After 50 years, we are finally going to transform the Armory, the largest armory in the world, into a space that will provide jobs and stability and recreation and community engagement. It is going to be phenomenal. And I'm excited about that because the residents of Kingsbridge, our borough, has long awaited this process. It's been one project after another, 30, 40, 50 years, and now we're at a point where it's moving forward. And I am excited about the work that we are doing at Orchard Beach. That is our Bronx Riviera. It sees 1.6 million tourists every year, and it has a $100 million transformation that is currently underway that will be complete this year. And that's exciting because when you talk about access to our waterfronts, our open spaces, we are the greenest borough in the city of New York, and you wouldn't think that because we don't always get that recognition. So all in all, there's a lot of capital that we're doing, some large scale, medium, and small. But the most important thing for me to recognize is the Bronx is a borough of opportunity. opportunities. We are a global destination. We are the birthplace of hip-hop, the home of salsa. We are a borough that deserves all of this investment. So when I look at the work that Center for Urban Futures is doing and with the 50 ideas, I looked at it and I said, Jonathan, I got 50 more for you. I have 100 ideas, because we cannot think that this work happens in a silo, right, Jonathan? We have to think outside the box and look at creative opportunities for our people.
Wow, so well said. Thank you. All right, so I'm not going to ask you for all 100 ideas,
no.
but maybe like 99. No, tell me, I mean, let's talk about the future. Let's talk about ideas, because as much as the borough is overflowing with opportunity, as much as there's all this progress that's being made, there's work to be done, clearly.
Right.
And so tell me, like, what are there a couple of ideas from that report that you've seen that are kind of particularly interesting or intriguing for you? Are there things that you just want to see done in the next several years that you feel like would address some of the kind of remaining challenges in the borough?
Absolutely. I have to talk about education, because it really is the pathway to a brighter future for our young people. We have amazing schools in this borough, and teachers and educators are doing phenomenal work despite a lot of challenges. And when you look at our educational system, the millions of dollars we invest in schools, we still have so many of our scholars that are not reading at grade level. That is why we work with the South Bronx Literacy Academy in District 7, and they're now rolling out a full-fledged school. They are the only school in our city that does screening for dyslexia, and we're very proud to have them in District 7. And it was mentioned, and I have to recognize Dr. Alexa Sordin from the lead school in District 7. She's doing amazing work. We have National Blue Ribbon schools. We have IB schools, but you never hear about it. So we are very intentional and adamant about lifting up our educators and making sure that we support parents in a real way, that we look at tech and addressing the digital divide. So many families have been disconnected pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and still now. So we're looking at innovation labs. We're looking at how we can use some of our school spaces to create these hubs, digital equity learning hubs within our schools. We're looking at STEAM. We're about to open the first ever Bronx STEAM school here in our borough in this September. And we're excited about that because it will focus on healthcare, life sciences, and research. And there will be pathways to these careers with Montefiore Einstein, Mercy University, and many of our other healthcare partners. There's a lot. We have a task force on higher education, so we are all about pathways to college for young people, but also pathways to careers. So we are working closely on scholarship opportunities to give young people a real chance, whether you go to an HBCU, a public or private college. I'm a CUNY SUNY grad, so I know the value of public higher education. And we also know that there are many scholars that have that path to a career. So that is why we work on entrepreneurial opportunities, apprenticeship. We work with unions. We want to create these pipelines into these incredible career industries that can lift our young people up. Work-based learning. I was able to fund a wood shop at one of our high schools. Like, I love these things. It allows you to think outside the box because we have to constantly think of the world that we're in, the IA world, you know, all the things that are happening with AI, and that's important. So education is a big deal. Healthcare is another big deal for me as well because we represent some of the highest rates of asthma, heart disease, obesity, kidney disease, opioid, fentanyl. We have a lot of challenges, but we've made a lot of progress. We're building out a bridge clinic at Lincoln Hospital, $6 million commitment last year. Very proud of that. Very proud that we are finally going to get a birthing center in the Bronx to deal with maternal health care, which is a call to action. It's a health care crisis. We've done a lot to work with legislators and others around doulas, midwives, and birth workers because we know the higher rates of maternal mortality are in communities of color with African American and Latina women. And we want to give them a fighting chance to not only carry their babies to term, but not lose their life at the same time. Economic development is a big, big priority, speaking to your 50 ideas. So we are focusing on economic development projects, access to capital for small businesses. Our economic development arm, BXCDC and Bronx Tourism, we are loaning small businesses loans. We're giving them access that they need so that their businesses can strive and thrive. And overall, our message this year, our blueprint, is the Bronx will strive and thrive in 25. We want to make sure we have access and opportunity for families. We want to lift up our communities. We want to strengthen our families. And we know that all of these different areas have to work together. We can't talk about jobs and workforce development and work-based learning for students if we don't talk about stable housing. That is a critical part of this work. So if I could just, summarize it for those three, there's a lot more, but definitely we are ambitious in driving down our unemployment rate, giving families pathways to the middle class, and supporting them with career pathways, and making sure that everyone has stability when it comes to jobs and housing and healthcare and all of the components we know that build our borough.
Well, thank you. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
No, but I actually really like that it's not just, you didn't just kind of talk about, affordability or education, but you kind of said about several specific things that you're doing. And I think that we know that we don't want to kind of get the perfect, get away with the good, and that we have to just kind of move forward with things that are going to have a concrete impact, and it sounds like that's happening. But I do want to ask, this is a mayoral election year. I know there was a mayoral forum here in the Bronx very recently. But if you're sitting with the next mayor, whoever that, maybe it's the same mayor, maybe it's a new mayor, but whoever it is, and you're saying hey, we've got we've got a lot of progress happening in the Bronx. We've got some things going, but there are some big issues remaining here.
Yep.
So when you talk about the policy issues that you laid out, from affordability to health to getting pathways into the middle class, education, is there one big thing that you say hey, we really need this from the next mayor of New York City? So maybe it's in 2026, but something that you'd really love to see, kind of a big initiative for the Bronx. And it could be a policy. I'm not talking about a development necessarily, but
Right. Gosh, I have so many ideas sitting with the next mayor, whoever that may be. But, first let me say that it has always been a challenge serving as borough president and representing the Bronx, realizing that we have a very dark history, but also we are resilient and we're tough, and we've always fought the good fight. We've always stepped up in a real way to help our brothers and sisters, and you see that in so many instances when we've had tragedies, whether it's gun violence, domestic violence, we've had horrific fires where people have galvanized to support neighbors in a real way, and I appreciate that, and it absolutely warms my heart knowing that we're doing the right thing for this time and this moment. But, I have to be extremely aggressive when I say we don't want anyone to dump on the Bronx. We are tired of being saturated with all of the programs that do not help lift up our borough. The Bronx has done its fair share when it comes to housing for formerly homeless families, homeless shelters, when it comes to transitional housing, intake. We have done our fair share, and I am beyond upset that at this time when we need jobs and real pathways to the middle class, instead of the proposal to give us 2,200 manufacturing jobs in the South Bronx, we are facing a migrant facility for single adult men at 2,200 capacity. That is not acceptable to me. I want jobs, I want programs to lift families up so that they can in turn be empowered to make better informed decisions. A part of this work as legislators and leaders is we want to change the mindset of our residents so that they understand you deserve better. You pay your rent every month, you raise your family, you should not live in substandard housing. It is not acceptable that you have a landlord that is neglecting tenants. That is not acceptable. Or you have fallen behind in your rent and you go to housing court without a lawyer. Not acceptable. And so my message to any candidate running for the mayoral position is to appreciate the value of what the Bronx does and what we bring to the economic system in our city. We can be the economic engine for the city if we had the investments that we needed. I assure you, if you give people, young adults, a job, you can transform their lives. During the pandemic, our unemployment rate was 26.6%. Today in 2025, we are down to 6.6%. And that is a testament to who we are as a borough, to the fact that people are looking at the Bronx in a different way. We still deal with the stereotypes that are associated with our borough, but we are not going to be distracted. We are going to be absolutely committed about the work that we are doing, the impact that it makes, and we are not going to allow anyone to come into our communities and destroy what we have worked so hard for, right? That is what this work is about. That is why we talk about livable communities, open space, activating our communities so that pedestrians, cyclists, children, older adults, families, veterans, people with disabilities, the LGBT community, everyone can feel safe, they can feel respected, they can feel equal, right? And I know we feel that threat now with the administration that's in the White House, where we're feeling that. We are nervous, we are just traumatized. We don't know how this process will go. It's only week 3, right? And so my message to anyone is that the Bronx is a borough of opportunities. And if you see the promise and potential that we represent, then you will not dump on our borough, but you would rather invest in our borough. Because when you invest in the Bronx, you are investing in the future of this city and of this state.
I just want to say, I did say passionate and charismatic, right?
All the time.
You know?
Yes, all the time.
So we got about 2 minutes left.
That's it?
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Maybe we can go for 3.
Okay,
But give me like 2 more ideas, you know, kind of some concrete things that you'd love to see going forward to kind of, again, we're here today around creating a stronger, more equitable borough. There's a lot of good things happening, but just like, I wonder if you can share, maybe it's some of the ideas that you saw from our 50 Ideas report, maybe it's ideas that you're hoping to kind of put out there in the coming years. But like, what are 2 more ideas that you have for making a more equitable borough?
So because we are a borough that represents Asthma Alley and have some of the highest rates of heart disease, I am a part of the effort to cap the Cross Bronx and to really create a platform over the Cross Bronx Expressway, which has been a source of systemic racism for decades. It has divided neighborhoods, it has divided our borough, and we want to make sure that with any revenue that we get in the city, that comes to the Bronx for capping the Cross Bronx. I talked about the Bronx STEAM School, which I'm very excited about. I am looking forward to working with our school community on building out more of our hydroponic gardens and vertical farming, because that's health and wellness. That's what builds healthy communities and access to food that is healthy, food equity and food justice. I am also very, very supportive of pathways to careers. So every 3 months in our office, we have been dedicated to working with the Department of Labor, who are in our office to full-time staff. Every 3 months, we have job and career fairs, and we're targeting the communities that are hard to reach, formerly incarcerated men and women. We're also working with veterans, people with disabilities, the LGBTQIA+ community. We're always looking at opportunities to work with inclusive employers. And so far, our job and career fairs have been very successful. Our applicants have been hired on the spot, and that's a big deal for us. I am a firm believer in financial literacy and financial empowerment. It is so important when we talk about programs that support our families in a real way so that you can save. Organizations like New York City Kids Rise, they have an incredible savings program for kindergarten to 2nd graders across our city, and they launched that in the Bronx. We have to stay ready so we don't have to get ready. And if we start on this path now, think about how we will be transformed in the next 5 years. So when you talk about the Bronx Federal Credit Union, yes. Yes, the People's Credit Union, yes. Why are we renters for the rest of our lives and we don't own property, right? We have to look at ownership. That's why I talk about home ownership pathways. I also talk about CLTs, community land trusts. We need to be able to take some of these buildings that are owned by people that are unscrupulous, and we need to take ownership of our property in this borough. And that is for us and by us, right? And so a lot of these efforts that we have just focus on multiple areas, but it's all about stabilizing and building healthy families. If you know better, you do better. And we cannot assume that all of our families understand and are acclimated to what we're doing as policymakers, legislators, advocates. That is why the power of communication is so important. Going into communities, social media, ethnic media, how do we get this information out? A large part, honestly, of November's election that we were missing is messaging. We don't message what we do well, and it doesn't translate into real results for the people that we are serving. And so we are looking, obviously, very, very intentionally at the work we do today at Borough Hall, how we can invest in more opportunities working with all of our partners, and also how we can engage the private sector, the non-for-profit sector, and the public sector. How can we all work together and align our priorities, put resources together so that ultimately we can get the change that we deserve? This is not going to happen overnight, but you have to start somewhere and have a vision and a blueprint. And you know what? Saying, we deserve better. We've done great work as a borough, but look at what we can do when we work together. So that, to me, is my message. We will strive and we will thrive in 25.
All right. Well, I wish I could go over about 80 more ideas with you, but that was a great start. So thanks for sharing so many good ones with us, and thanks for the important work you're doing. Everybody, another hand for the borough president. All right, so now we're going to continue with a couple more idea pitches, including a couple that are really about some of the topics that you talked about. So let's keep it going. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you again for Jonathan and for the borough president for leading on this amazing conversation and bringing this group together. We couldn't agree more about bringing to the Bronx programs that lift up families. So with that said, I want to introduce myself. I'm Debbie Roman. I am the proud managing director for Perscolas New York, and I'm here to pitch our big idea. Imagine living in a community where 1 in 4 people struggle below the poverty line. In the Bronx, dreams of a better future are often overshadowed by the harsh realities of bills, rent, and food cost. In the Bronx is full of talent and potential, as we just heard from the borough president. And as managing director at Perscolas New York, I've seen it firsthand. But systemic barriers continue to hold our residents back. For many Bronx residents, technical skills training like those provided by Perscolas offer a clear path out of poverty. Our full-time programs are offered at no financial cost and provide the tools needed for higher-paying, sustainable careers. However, a critical barrier remains: the cost of living while attending Perscolas training programs. Residents are often forced to choose between pursuing a brighter, more lucrative future and meeting immediate needs like paying rent or putting food on the table. We can remove that impossible choice by providing stipends. Stipends are financial support designed to cover essentials such as food, utilities, childcare, transportation, and even broadband and internet access. By reducing these financial pressures, stipends allow learners to focus fully on their training programs by unlocking their potential. This solution is not just theoretical. It has been tested and proven effectively. In 2021, Perscolas partnered with SkillUp to evaluate the impact of stipends on low-income learners. The results showed an 18% increase in graduation rates and a 10% improvement in employment outcomes. Individuals who received stipends secured the tech jobs significantly faster than those who did not. Graduates who benefited from the stipend generated up to 5 times the initial investment back into the economy. Let me tell you a story. So when COVID pandemic disrupted her career, as a security guard and professional DJ, Tori Haynes, one of our graduates, turned to Perscolas to transition into tech. Tori was drawn to Perscolas by its no-cost, short-term training, and it promised all of the certifications. With the support of the $3,000 0% loan and a strong community, Tori graduated and secured a life-changing role as an IT support specialist at MCB Real Estate. Stipends are a proven solution that breaks down barriers and create opportunity. Imagine scaling this solution to every Bronx resident enrolled in an evidence-based training program like Perscolas. Together, we can empower individuals to build better futures and drive long-term economic growth in the Bronx. Let's invest in the people, the potential, and the future of our borough. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kara McLean. I am the Vice President of Community Development at WEDCO, Women's Housing and Economic Development Corporation here in the Bronx. And I'm so excited today to talk to you about increasing financial access, increasing financial empowerment, ownership, and building wealth in the Bronx. So, most of us in this room likely have a bank account to receive our income and pay our bills. But that's not the case for tens of thousands of Bronx residents. In fact, about 1 in 5 households in the Bronx does not have a bank account, nearly double the citywide average. This means Bronx residents are paying high fees for cashing checks or for prepaid cards. Even for those with bank accounts, we have seen our already few bank options decrease due to a rise in branch closures. And if you can't meet the account balance minimum, you may be paying $12 a month in fees just to keep your bank account open. The result is that many Bronxites have little opportunity to plan, to save, to invest, and build wealth. Now, here's some good news. Recently, we celebrated the opening of a new branch in the Bronx, and this one is by the people, for the people. The Bronx People's Federal Credit Union is a community development financial cooperative. Yes, we can cheer for that, the Bronx People's Federal Credit Union. It's a community development financial cooperative that offers free and low-cost financial services, products, and counseling to its member owners. It invests 100% of resources back into helping members reach their financial goals and back into their communities. So what's at stake for the Bronx? Our goal is to keep more of our people's money circulating in our neighborhoods, reinvesting in Bronx people, in our housing, and in our small businesses, including worker-owned cooperatives. We need this first Bronx People's Credit Union branch to thrive, so they can open more branches across the borough to help others who are still unbanked, underbanked, or unhappily banked, as I like to call it, to also thrive. So what can you do? Everyone here can become a member at our borough's first brick-and-mortar Bronx People's Credit Union branch at 941 Intervale Avenue, right off of the 2 and 5 train. New members referred through WEDCO or one of our Bronx Financial Access Coalition partners receive a $50 sign-up bonus and cool swag, which I brought today, like this tote bag, all while supplies last. We're saying build wealth, not debt. On the policy level, though, I just wanted to mention that we really need our state leaders to help to fix the New York State CDFI fund, to make it much easier for community development credit unions and other CDFIs to access the $25 million already allocated to help them expand to serve communities like ours. With a few key tweaks by our state leaders, credit unions like ours can take advantage of state funds to add more branch locations across this borough and help more Bronx residents to build wealth and to thrive. Thank you.
Good morning. If I could, yes, just have all of our first panelists come and join me. Grab a seat anywhere you like. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Fantastic. Hey, Lisa. Good morning, everybody. I don't know. I feel like the energy flagged slightly. Do you all agree? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. There we go. Hey, Lisa, let me switch with you so I can see everybody without flipping my head. Okay, fantastic. Good morning. My name is Eli Dvorkin. I'm the Editorial and Policy Director at the Center for an Urban Future. It's so wonderful to see everybody out here today, making it through the slush and the snow. We're incredibly excited for today's conversation. So let me just briefly mention who I'm here with today. We're so lucky to be joined by some amazing Bronxites. I'm just going to briefly mention who you are. If you're looking for everybody's bios, you can scan that QR code that you have in your packets. You can read off about all of our amazing panelists. So let me just briefly mention who's here. I'm joined today by Lisa Soren, the Executive Director of the Bronx Chamber of Commerce, Geraldine Rodriguez, the co-founder and CEO of the Knowledge House, John Weed, who has stepped in for Eileen Torres today. He's the Assistant Executive Director at Bronx Works, and Michael Johnson, the founding member and advisory board member of South Bronx Unite. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you. We're an amazing group. So let me just start by saying, we've heard already this morning some amazing ideas for the Bronx. I'm excited that we're going to hear a few more right now. And part of, I think, what has come across already today is how much energy and optimism there is in the Bronx today. And as the borough president said so eloquently, that's not always the story that you hear in the media. It's not the story you necessarily even hear from other elected officials. But if you spend time in the Bronx, you do hear it. And we think it's important that we're amplifying where we are today in the Bronx after years and decades of hard work to get to this place. And when I look at the four of you, I'm really thinking about some of the Bronx's greatest strengths, reflected on this panel. Small business and entrepreneurship, innovation, compassionate social services, community activism. I mean, these are the core strengths that have brought the Bronx where we are today. So on that optimistic note, let me ask all of you, what is something that's going right now in the Bronx? What could policymakers do to build on something that you think is working and help make it even bigger, even better, even more powerful in the Bronx today? Feel free, anybody. Yeah, Lisa, go right ahead.
Okay, so I think a lot is going right, more than we ever expected. I think that the growth of Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens had shown that the Bronx now is the shining star of all our boroughs. And with the development, the work, entrepreneurs are blowing up, especially after COVID. There's always these small silver linings that came out of such disaster, as I say. But I think what needs to happen is we need to encourage, with all the development that's happening and all the small businesses that are thriving here in the borough, is our elected officials have to continue to support that, increase the opportunity for minority-owned businesses. We certify so many businesses, but the opportunities remain limited for some of our businesses. And I think you have to hire. If you're building here, you hire here, right? Because these successes have to be for those who have stuck it out in our beautiful borough, who have shown that staying here is probably one of the best decisions they've ever made. And so I think now is our opportunity as residents, business owners, nonprofits to really shine on the economic boom that's happening in our beautiful borough.
I see a lot of positive going on. I've been working in the Bronx for over 30 years, and I see tremendous positive results now, especially with a vast amount of developments going up and investment. And the borough president mentioned the transportation hubs that are coming in. So it's just it's great to see. I remember when I started working at Bronx Works more than 30 years ago. It was the Bronx was very different, right? It was there were a lot of burned out buildings, and there was a lot of empty spaces. Now you can hardly find that, and it's just wonderful to see the different groups that have moved in to the borough. Different immigrant groups that have come in. It's just great to see all that growth.
Everything that the Bronx Borough President said about Bronxites being resilient really is what keeps me optimistic about the borough. You know, folks just coming together when it matters the most. And I think right now we have an opportunity to come together. And I think that we need unity more than ever. And so I think it's really important for community leaders and policymakers to really go to coalitions and leaders and be in community and communication about what is needed, how to advocate for, you know, what's the right way forward so that we can really thrive.
Yeah, it's hard to follow all that, but you guys are doing great. I don't know if I got much more to say, but I would like to add that, you know, you're right. The borough president had a really good point around resiliency of our community. Our people have been standing up and fighting back for decades, being given less than most, and still fighting back, and we still continue to do so. So that's what I see as being our true advantage we have. I see that probably any other borough has not been dealt the cards we've been dealt, and we're still here, and we're going to still stay here, and we're going to strive. We're not just going to survive. And so I think what elected officials can do is listen to the people. Economic development and job creation has never trickled down, not appropriately, right? So our people need to strive, and how can they do that? I think us listening to them, or elected officials listening to them, we all must listen to them, is the way forward.
Thanks, Michael. I want to get into some of those specifics, how we start to do some of those things. But just as we continue to shape this conversation, let me ask all of you, you know, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say there are some big challenges in the Bronx today. You know, we've still got the highest poverty rate in New York City. We've still got the highest unemployment rate, although it's come down, way, way down from where we were, obviously, in 2020. We see a lot of inequity in access to quality education, to public and open spaces, to you know, arts and culture, despite all the vibrancy that does exist here. And I mean in terms of the investment that we see, in terms of the opportunities for local residents to participate in the parts of our economy that are growing and where good jobs are being created. So help me understand a little bit more from your perspectives. What are you worried about? What keeps you up at night? What do you still see as the most pressing concerns in the Bronx today?
I would say, I mean, everyone comes from a different perspective, right? From my perspective, social services, really four points: jobs, food insecurity, housing, and childcare. I think those are primary concerns for people that we serve. I mean, we serve about 65,000 people a year, and those are the kinds of concerns that come out. And even with the housing, there has been a lot of housing built, but the AMI, you know, is high. If that can be looked at from a policy standpoint to lower that threshold, so that you know, housing can be more affordable. I mean, when housing is built and they call it affordable housing, it's not always that affordable to the Bronx residents. And then childcare. You know, people need to work, so childcare is critical. Childcare and after-school programming. At the state level, I was in Albany this week. You know, at the state level, 8,000 slots in the after-school program were cut, 4,000 in the Bronx. So that's a big hit for the Bronx when, you know, half of all the slots funded by the state were cut here in this borough. You know, and then the food insecurity we've seen. And a lot of these things came out of the pandemic. Food insecurity, for example, we at Bronx Works operated 2 pantries, now we operate 10. And that need has only increased. You know, the price of food and everything else, everyone knows that. But, and then fresh food, and I think the borough president talked about this also, you know, with food deserts and Farm stands, we operate 2 farm stands. That's critically important, I think, for the community to bring in fresh food when needed. And I'll stop there. Sorry.
That was a lot. What's keeping me up at night is that our immigrant community is under attack. And in the Bronx, we have such a vibrant immigrant community. We have a new migrant community. And just understanding that we can be targeted for ICE raids, for injustice. And then the other concern, right, that there is a recent uproar about a new shelter being built, and it was done without consulting Bronx residents. And if that keeps happening, I don't think that the community will have enough buy-in and support to solve this problem in a united way. And so just the fact that this borough might be under attack is like what's keeping me up at night.
Those are really good points. I think for me, it's education, right? We are the borough of the most universities and colleges, are elementary, but I think what's happening is we are removing access to arts and culture after-school programs, hands-on learning. There's so much focus on technology, which is great, but the kids coming out of school still don't know how to have a conversation, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, which is really challenging when you're interviewing some of these kids. I think exposure to real-life experience is absolutely needed. I think we have to look past even internships, right? We use that word, we need intern, but what about shadowing opportunities? You know, you just don't have to work it, because what I see a lot of is when these young men and women go into intern opportunities, they're put to file or very non-essential work, right? The opportunity for these young men and women is really seeing what work is all about, how to dress properly, how to speak properly. It's not all about the technology in their hand, and that really concerns me, because no matter how much technology may be taking over the world, you still need to have these real conversations. You still need to advocate for yourself, and if the schools aren't prioritizing that, that's a problem, because we have kids graduating with minimal reading, don't know how to write a memo. I had somebody cross my office who didn't know how to put a stamp on an envelope, which is kind of mind-boggling to me. But those are the small things that make an entrepreneur. Those are the small things that we really need to focus on to give the opportunities. And then the second for me is, how do you provide opportunities for these young adults to stay in the borough? We have all these universities and colleges, but they graduate and they leave. We need them to stay put, and what piece of the puzzle are we missing to fill that gap?
That's great, Lisa. Well, let me ask you a question that builds off of that point. I mean, you know, so much of the conversation around the city and nationally has been focused on affordability. When I think about affordability in the Bronx, big part of the challenge is around income and wages and wealth. Folks know that they are facing rising costs, but incomes haven't kept pace. And too many Bronx residents are facing major barriers to accessing upward economic mobility. So I want to ask your thoughts about affordability in general, ideas that you might have to make the costs come down in the Bronx. But to me, it feels like the less talked about side of the equation is, how do you actually help more people access living wage jobs, get on the path to the middle class? And if you do that, you're able to help folks afford to stay in a borough that's getting more expensive. So I want to ask you your thoughts, ideas that you all have around affordability, and I guess I would push in particular on ideas that would help more Bronx residents access well-paying jobs. But yeah, Michael saw your hand go up, so go for it.
Before you jump, I want to answer that too, but I want to go back to your prior question about what keeps me up. It's the health, the mental and physical health of our community, right? If we can't breathe, we can't do anything, right? Yeah. And our cognitive development in our children is directly linked to the air they breathe. So when we talk about school performance, District 7, the poorest performing school district in the city, is also sitting in my neighborhood where I wake up every morning, because our children are being left behind because of what their environment is feeding them. So I think when I have neighbors who have died, I have people who are sick, so that's really, I mean, that's passionately impacts me. I just had to say that this is super important for me when I wake up. How can I be part of that instrument to change the situation that's happening right now, right? To where our kids every day, they don't have the same opportunity because they're being left behind because of their built environment. You know, and if we really want to create jobs and economic opportunities for our community, we have to invest in our mom and pops, right? Don't give money to large industry with tax subsidies that don't really hire locally. And I think we've never really done that effectively. We have folks who are you know, have their own businesses in our communities. They're not giving any tax breaks. They're not getting any kind of subsidies. They're hiring locally, and they have to make it by how they pull their bootstraps up and keep it moving. But who's investing in them? Because they do invest in our community.
I would just like to build on that because I think, obviously, investing in workforce development, education, career pathways leads to economic mobility and living wages. But a lot of nonprofits would love the opportunity to have the capacity to provide stipends, like Debbie Roman's idea, I love that. Or work with other CBOs, government agencies, to provide wraparound services, mental health services for job trainees. And I think that if there was more investment in those types of services so that workforce development training providers can really focus on upskilling and make sure that their participants are okay, are showing up well, I think that will go a long way. I know that you talked about the computers and the technology being like the focus of attention, but I truly think these days, 90% of all jobs require very basic tech skills. So it's really important that kids of all ages, our public school teachers, parents, and job seekers have the very basic tech skills. You know, I know that in the past several years, there's been a lot of investment in tech training specifically so that folks have access to those high-paying tech jobs. That should continue, that should expand. Yeah. But I think right now, everyone needs computer literacy skills. Everyone needs to know AI fundamentals. A lot of those basic job skills, eventually they will be replaced by AI. But if our young people and our teachers don't even know how to use AI products, they will get left out of innovation. And right now, this administration is investing in AI. So there is an opportunity to align. I hate to say that, but right, there are opportunities to prepare everyone for the future of work, and that's going to really lead to living wages and economic mobility.
And I have to agree with you 100%. And so I don't want the message to be mixed about the combination, because I know last year the chamber decided to really take on the mission of AI, right? Because small businesses are terrified of it. They just see it as, you know, something that's going to close them down. And the one message from a professional AI was only those who don't keep up with technology will be the ones impacted by technology, right? And that covers for business and otherwise. And I think as it relates to small business, so there's a couple of things, and I won't take up too much time, but workforce development, I have had, anybody who knows me, I have been pushing really hard that we do general workforce development. Technology has come up, but we're not training our individuals for jobs that are available. We're just training for training. And I see a lot of that, and it really concerns me because I think the administration has heard me till they're blue in the face about the fact that let's figure out what jobs, you know, what jobs are absolutely needed, and let's train to those jobs instead of training in hopes of getting a job, right? And then add it to the small business. Our city government needs to back off our small businesses with rules, regulations, and fines, and all these things that just make it really hard to do business in New York. They're headed in the right direction, but I think as long as we continue to use our voices, they will understand that they need to make New York City a little more easier to do business here, especially in our borough.
I agree with everything everyone's saying. I would say that with job training, there's an added element here that we find. We do some job training, and we have a workforce development program. Retention. So, you know, we're working with a lot of first-time wage earners. So the retention aspect is a big deal because, you know, people coming into a job for the first time or changing jobs, they need wraparound services from our perspective in order to keep them on track. So we do 6 months, 9 months, a year retention to keep people in their jobs. And then if they're working in a track to improve their skill level, then, I mean, you mentioned stipends. It's so critical that people not have a stopgap in their income so that they can pay their rent and continue on. So all these kinds of things, not just job training, but job training with the extras, the retention, the stipends, and as you said, working with fields of service that are actually meaningful.
Let me ask you all a little bit about another major concern I think Bronx residents have every day. You know, when surveyed, Bronx residents express the most dissatisfaction with quality of life of residents of any borough. You know, just 21% of Bronx residents say that they think quality of life in the Bronx is okay or pretty good. And that suggests some deeper challenges, challenges around retaining young people who grow up here, challenges around attracting, you know, folks to start and grow businesses here, some deeper challenges with our infrastructure, whether that's social infrastructure or our parks and open spaces, our environment. So I'd love to get your take on not only what are the big quality of life challenges in the borough, but most importantly, what's one idea that each of you might have to address some of those challenges, to improve quality of life, to invest in the kinds of programs or the people here in the Bronx that are actually making a difference there?
That's a hard one.
I can start. I think quality of life, you know, there's a lot of things that feed that. When you look at a community that has a lot of challenges, how can we do something different? What that could be is, in some instances, it could be creating those waterfront or green space opportunities, can create healthier outcomes. It could create more trees, would it freshen the air, so we don't have any contaminants infecting folks. But I think it's also housing, right? Quality housing, deeply affordable housing. I think it also could be like our schools could be better funded. Not so many charter schools popping up and public schools are not being funded properly. So it's like, you know, going back to waiting for Superman, right? We all can't go to charter schools, but our children need really good education. And retention is really important in terms of teachers. If our children have quality education, if our people have opportunities for training and job creation and job retention, that increases quality of life, but also having what we see others enjoy, right? If we're in a borough that has the largest quantity of green space in the city, but some communities have one park for 60,000 people, that's an injustice and that doesn't create quality, right? So, you know, I think it's systemic and it has been institutionalized in terms of like the way our communities have been relegated to having less quality, less health, less life expectancy. So I think there's a lot of things we can do to create that, and I think it comes from like being really investing in the natural environment, really investing what really has not been looked at as economic opportunities, which is creating a place where we could really recreate and really enjoy socialization with each other. During the pandemic, we saw how important open space was. Instead of being so isolated, you can go out there in green space and to Orchard Beach and other locations like that to really get out and be more social. I don't think there's enough investment in that. Less than 1% is contributed to parks in the city's budget, which is ridiculous. So quality of life has to be dealt with, I think, on multiple realms.
I think cleanliness. You know, I find as we're going through the entire borough, we need to take a little more pride in our communities. And I think that's taught and not just expected. You know, the mayor has done a great job in containerizing garbage and all of that, but I think it really falls to the individuals, to our youth. You drop a piece of paper, you pick it up, right? The message has to be continuous to take pride in the community in which you live. Maybe if there were more investment, you know, visually you're walking down a block and it's full of garbage or oversaturated with vendors, the automatic instinct is to walk away from it, right? You're automatically thinking safety, you're thinking what you may be walking into, which harms our commercial corridors. And although it may seem something very simple, but visually you have a green space, which we have a lot of, but there's minimal garbage, minimal graffiti. It's a sense of pride, and which is really good just for the overall mental health of living in an area where people just love where they live. And I think the message has to start when they're young. I think our biggest advocates are kids. They get excited about something and they push parents and family members to follow suit. And garbage is just a big, big issue. And I would love the city and funding to be really invested in cleaning up some of these communities.
I think education and community building are very important. In terms of education, we work a lot with school kids. We have a summer youth employment program that employs over 1,300 kids, and some of those are middle school age, and so they work in project-based programs over the course of 6 weeks. And what we do is we do environmental education, we do projects that teach cleanliness, of your environment. The other thing is with community building, there's a lot of new buildings going up, right? So we work with developers to see if we can get open space around the building or in proximity. Maybe there's a plaza that they can build into the project so that there's open space. But then we do a lot of supportive housing work. So these new buildings that you see going up have 10 or 15% formerly homeless families moving in. So the supportive housing model really builds community within that structure. And I think, that with education of young people will help, the Bronx develop in a more environmental standard.
Well, Michael, I'm going to bring you back in on that point. And thinking about how to create development or redevelopment that meets all of these different community goals. And you're doing something right now that's been a long time coming. That I think the audience would appreciate hearing a little bit more about, and that's the adaptive reuse of the Lincoln Detox Facility. I'd love it if you could just tell folks a little bit about what that project is, but I also love it if you could talk to us about how do we do more of this? What does it taken to get to this point? And if Bronx leaders, elected officials, policymakers want to see more projects like the reuse of Lincoln, how do we get there?
By listening to community. I mean, it's a community-driven development project, right? Very seldom are those ever successful. We heard about the Kingsbridge Army. We heard like Northwest Bronx trying to do that. Other community-based organizations have tried to do similar things like we're doing now. Some have been successful, but it's really hard to get that kind of investment and to build out something that we feel we need for health, education, and the arts. The Hearts Building, which was, previously a center that created a lot of health to our community and help for people who were suffering with addiction. And they use Reiki and acupuncture as a holistic approach to recovery. And we're trying to mirror that by creating a holistic approach to community health. So how do you do that? I think is we need support from elected officials. We need support from any and everyone to understand, like, when communities come together to create their own vision, help invest into it, because it's sustainable that way. When you do it from the top down, it typically isn't. We end up with things that we don't really want. But when folks in the community are able to come together and have a vision, that should be supported. And I think that's, the pathway towards a more realistic, sustainable future.
I'd love to continue on that theme. Other ideas or thoughts you have, and we can move into some other issue areas, but where you see a concrete opportunity to transform or reimagine a place in the Bronx. We just mentioned, Michael just mentioned the Kingsbridge Armory, which the borough president talked about. The transformation of the former Lincoln Detox Center into the Hart Building. Are there other places in the Bronx where maybe you pass every day, or places that you know or that you see where you think, why haven't we done something a little different, and what might that be?
Actually, the borough president also mentioned the Cross Bronx Expressway. We've been involved with the reimagining the Cross Bronx. I drive on it every day, actually. But, there needs to be more space, open space around that, right? So, that's been an eyesore and a problem for years. But that's one, I think, example of an idea that's very interesting.
I think having innovation centers locally that are open to the general public, that are places for, students, entrepreneurs, folks to come together and like tinker on ideas is important. I think like a few years ago there was a big investment and focus on like incubators popping up all across the city. And of course in the Bronx there are less of those opportunities. But if we can just reimagine like our empty spaces, our underutilized spaces, and open them up just to be innovation centers, like that would be great. And I think that the Bronx has a great opportunity. Like we have a really big healthcare sector, transportation, logistics. All of these, of course, need innovation to like thrive. And so there's an opportunity to educate folks, to solve problems together and create jobs.
That's great, Jola. Lisa, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, but it builds off of that theme, I think. Building on some of the strengths in the Bronx, you mentioned those industries that are growing here. Well, one thing that's growing here is entrepreneurship. The Bronx has seen more new business starts, I should say, a faster rate of new business growth than any other borough. A huge leap, almost 66% in new business starts in the borough since before the pandemic. That's a great strength of the Bronx. It speaks to the entrepreneurialism that courses throughout the Bronx. But there's no question that starting a new business is just step one. Seeing those businesses actually strive and thrive, like the borough president was saying, is a whole other challenge. So I guess my question for you, Lisa, is how do we keep that going? How do we make sure that more of the entrepreneurial energy that exists in the Bronx actually, and this, Geraldine, for you as well as a social entrepreneur, how do we make sure that more of that entrepreneurial energy translates into lasting businesses, translates into growing businesses? What are some ideas there?
I think it's about support. I've always said we have geniuses in the Bronx, and they're proving it, right? The amount of ideas that came out of people who were doing business in their own homes, which was kind of fascinating, to taking that to the outside public when they realized those are services or businesses that were needed. Honestly, I think it's about training. It's easy to start a business. It becomes very difficult to sustain it. And I think it's super important that we encourage the sustainability of these businesses by providing more access to business plans, to how to sustain, how to grow, how to use technology, right? We have a corridor, an assembly corridor here in the Bronx, where when we surveyed them, 70% of these businesses had no access to technology. They didn't use social media. They didn't use, even their cash registers were like, old school, like we grew up on, or they grew up on. I'm still young. But, that whole concept. Yes, I live in denial. But I think it's important, one, that we support them, that we buy from them, that we visit them, that we provide the services that they need, and we market them. I think the Bronx has so much to offer, and I'm so proud of everything that goes on, and we really go out of our way to make sure that we give them access. We have outreach teams that go door to door, making sure that we make ourselves available so that through education, through trying to track down some of the financial services, and really encourage and use them as the examples of what can happen when you just put your creativity to work, and then they have the rest of us out here to support them. The Bronx Chamber uses a line, and the borough president and I share that one. The Bronx means business, and that means on all levels. That's about the business of having a business. That means that we take everything that we do seriously, and we encourage those. So honestly, don't stop the creativity. Keep it up and reach out, because networking, I can't push that enough. Networking is the opportunities of being able to meet the right people, to share ideas, to do partnerships, and to develop that wealth and knowledge that you need to sustain your business.
That's great, Lisa. Yeah, Geraldine, I mean, similar question. I think as an entrepreneur on this panel, I'd really love your thoughts.
Yeah. I'll just add by emphasizing something that Lisa said earlier. We have the habit of training folks just for training's sake. And I know at least at the Knowledge House, like we provide, tech training for software engineering, and very often our graduates have to leave their borough to go to their job. They have to go downtown to do their work. And we would love to find more Bronx employers. So if we really worked with small businesses and surveyed them on their needs, is it social media? Is it digitizing some of their services? There are so many youth. All of our youth are digital natives. They literally use social media every day. They use technology every single day. And so if we surveyed our small businesses and knew what are the skills that they need, we can supply them with the talent. We can actually provide those training programs and create more internships, part-time jobs, freelance opportunities, and eventually full-time jobs so that our small businesses and local Bronx employers can have the talent that they need to keep growing.
100%.
That's great, Geraldine. Let me ask about one other issue area that Geraldine actually brought up earlier. You know, over a third of Bronx residents are immigrants. And we see the pressures that immigrants are facing right now. We also see all the ways that immigrants strengthen and benefit the borough. An outsized share of our entrepreneurs and small business owners, just for starters, such an important part of our workforce. I'm curious, do any of you have a specific idea around strengthening our resources to support immigrants, around unleashing more of the potential that immigrants generate and create in the Bronx? Is there something new or specific that we should be doing there?
We can start with something really simple and making language available in all languages. You know, it's easy, English and Spanish. Yeah, most of us do it. But to your exact point, the amount of immigrants here and the amount of languages that are spoken, we need to service them. We need to let them know that their language and their skills matter. And to be able to do that, it's something very simple. Let them access the information in the language in which they brought to the United States. To me, that's super important. And it's a challenge we face every day.
We run a lot of ESL classes, and it's increased tremendously over the last few years in terms of the numbers. And, you know, it used to be just Spanish-speaking clients that would come in and wanted to learn English. And most of the time, they're, you know, the English acquisition is for, you know, job, you know, to go to college or for a job. Now we see a lot of people coming in, they speak French, they speak Arabic, they speak Bangladesh. So it's diversified a lot, but the need is there, and the need is greater. And so I think more funding for, you know, ESL classes would be a benefit to the population out there. I mean, we can't serve the amount of people that come in, right? So it's always it's always bursting at the seams. So we have you know, we have to cut off our enrollment at some point. So I'd say more of that.
That's great, John. Let me ask about one other key population in the Bronx, and that is our older adults, which we've talked about a little bit earlier today. You know, the Bronx is seeing a fast-growing older adult population.
Yes.
You know, up over a third over the past decade. And that comes with a lot of opportunities, potentially, to find new ways to engage older adults, and a lot of big challenges as well. One idea from any of you around what can we do to better support our aging borough, to unlock more of the potential that lies within our older adults, or to help address some of the challenges that comes with a borough that's getting older?
I think, I mean, seniors are a big part of what we do. And what we see now are young seniors, right? So people coming in to our senior centers who are on the younger side, right? 60. We also have the 80, 90, and 100-year-olds. But a young senior needs are different, right? They want to be engaged in community. So one of the things that we do is we have an intergenerational program where seniors can mentor the youth, because that's a big issue, right? Etiquette and manners and things like that. So the seniors come in and they get a lot out of it because they're becoming civically engaged, right? So and then we have them work on community programs. One of the things that we run 2 farm stands, and actually those were run initially by seniors at our senior centers. So they identified a problem, that there was a food desert, there wasn't enough fresh vegetables around. Well, why don't we start up a farm stand? So we did that. That was about 10 years ago, and it still operates on the Grand Concourse one on St. Anne's Avenue, but one on the Grand Concourse every Thursday from July to November. So if you can get seniors involved in the community, I think the community is much more improved because of it. The other thing is, it's, older adult centers are often a hub for activities. So the more diverse activities that you can have for seniors, the more engaged they are and the better off the community will be.
Well, John, I want to ask a follow-up question there, because you brought up a really interesting idea, which is that you heard from older adults in your community about the need for fresh food, and then you were able to meet that need. And Michael, you talked earlier about, hey, one thing that policymakers need to do is listen. So I'm curious, we've been hearing your ideas, and we want to hear more of them, but what's something that any of you have heard from another Bronxite, from somebody in your community, that you think that's a good idea, people should be listening? And maybe I'm looking to you, Michael, but I'm curious if maybe it's somebody who's a participant or a graduate of the Knowledge House, or a small business owner, Lisa, but something that you kind of heard from someone else in the Bronx, and you think there's a really good idea there.
I would say what I hear a lot about is how can we reclaim some public space that is vacant or underutilized for the needs that we have locally to create the farmers markets or some space where people can gather. But going back to seniors a little bit, a lot of those seniors are raising their grandchildren, and a large population of which are doing that, and they don't have a lot of social services to provide assistance. I think door to door, actually knocking on doors of seniors and NYCHA housing is really important. Like, what are they experiencing? What do they need? Again, a listening campaign, right? To find out really what can we do to assist them having increased quality of life. We have the second highest concentration of NYCHA development right here in Mott Haven. Five developments, thousands of units. Those seniors are locked most of the time in their apartments, especially during the pandemic. So we need, I think, more social services where they can actually go door to door, figure out what they need, how can we assist, and then finding, when we hear that, then how can we activate it? So we're a community that's been over-researched, but very little action, right? So I think our people, what they're saying and are seeing is that, some of the ideas they have, we need to activate them. And that comes in an array of different ways, and that's what we're trying to do, is really listen and be engaged. It could be an elevator at the train station. There's only one here at Ostos when you come into the Bronx. There's one at the hub. But when you go to 138th Street, the entire stretch there, when there's like thousands of people live there, handicap accessibility is nothing. And you said about garbage. I mean, the garbage bin, they don't clean up. And if a bag breaks on the sidewalk or on the street, they don't clean it up. But I think listening to our community about what they need is super important. And I don't want to see, I can't sit here and speak for them, but I think if we could create more opportunities for that, I think we can see how we could really have a better outcome for our society.
Thanks, Michael.
I think that funding more of our nonprofits, it's an old idea to make new, and that is opening the door for nonprofits for our youth, for our teenagers to have somewhere to go and take them off the streets, because when they have something to do, they become much more productive citizens, and you're keeping them away, because one of the biggest issues through violence and these young kids just not knowing anything further, let's reopen up all these nonprofits. Let's provide students somewhere to go, productive, having adults there as their mentors, but letting them come out on their playing grounds, anything from basketball, the arts. The arts play such an incredible role, the creativity that comes from that. It should be mandated back into the schools, given to the nonprofits, offer opportunities that should be easy to access instead of us having to beg for them. I just think it's a round thing.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, go ahead.
One idea that has been floating around that I am in support of is building a holistic tech plan for the Bronx, or a digital equity plan for the Bronx. And unfortunately last year, like we heard our governor say, that kids in the Bronx don't even know what a computer is. And so there's a reason why she said that, right? Like, there's this perception out there that Bronx residents just don't have access to computers. We're not educated about technology. And so we really need a holistic strategy to address that and make sure that we are able to provide digital empowerment to all people, residents of all ages. So a holistic plan that serves youth, public school teachers, really expanding things like computer science for all, integrating AI fundamentals into that, investing in more workforce development so that Bronx folks are not left out of these high-paying tech jobs and the future of AI, making sure that digital literacy, computer literacy is available to our seniors, our small businesses, so that everyone is included is so important. And of course, making sure that folks have access to high-quality internet and devices. And then this all will create not only the education needed so that folks have the skills, have access to the jobs, but even our entrepreneurs. You know, they will have talent to actually create tech jobs, to build with technology. I am dying to see a local Bronx person like build a tech company in the Bronx.
Yes.
Like that would be game changing for us. And so I think all of that can happen with a very intentional Bronx tech plan.
That's really exciting, Geraldine. Well, on that optimistic note, I want to turn it over to our audience for just a few minutes. I think folks may have some questions for the four of you. We have, about 10 minutes, maybe a couple minutes, a couple questions we could get in. So please, show me your hands. We will come to you. The way this will work today, and for any Q&A today, we're going to bring microphones down to the end of your row. You'll just have to slide out to actually speak into the microphone. Please let me know your name. We'll come right down to the third row to begin. My colleague's just going to run right down to the third row. Please just say your name. If you're here with an organization, try to keep your question brief, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. Thank you.
It's more of a comment. Hi, everybody. I'm Alexis Smallwood-Foote, and I'm actually a product of what you guys are all talking about. I was in foster care in New York City. My adopted mother raised me when my mother couldn't, and I'm a part of the Harlem Children's Zone. I am actually part of the Real Edgemere CLT, which stands for Residents Acquiring Land, where we have over 119 lots in Far Rockaway to do home ownership and arts and open spaces. So I want to tell you guys is to continue to dream, because there's children like me that needed everybody in this room to believe in her when I was the wild style child, right? So keep dreaming and keep believing, because there's kids like me that need someone to believe in them. I am a part of the Harlem Children's Zone, so thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thank you so much. And just show of hands again. So we'll go to the right side. John, wearing the jacket right there. Yep. And then we'll come to the left side after. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm George Nunez, founder and CEO of Bronx Tech Hub, building a tech ecosystem in the Bronx focused on workforce development, education, and entrepreneurial access. Appreciate all the work that you all are doing. Really is inspiring to see. I guess my question to you all is, what is something that we could do now to tackle some of the challenges that you all mentioned that we should fix and speak to in terms of government officials, and also rely on government funding on, but what is something that we could do now to create or inflict change? Thank you.
Allow me to jump in. I tend to do that a lot. I apologize. Love to hear myself talk. I think you hit the nail on the head, and we had a roundtable a couple of weeks ago with Senator Gillibrand, right? And to your exact point, it's the listening. I think, and this was a conversation her and I had a couple of months ago, where the Bronx always seems to be left out of opportunities. And I'll start with the funding. And when you do your research, I'm not going to call anybody out or other boroughs, they get a lot of money both from the federal and the state. And when you look at the numbers comparatively, the Bronx seems to be like at the back end, whether that's our own fault by not being more proactive, or the elected officials who feel like we're okay or we don't matter. And I'm not speaking for anyone in particular, right? But I think what happened that day with the roundtable is a great start. It's really about putting context and very specific needs to our elected officials, starting from feds on down, as challenging as life is looking right now. The immediate is collaborative work, collaborative voice, and making sure that they know our needs, because what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the oil, or whatever that is? what? Yeah, that. That's where we need to go. We need to unify the voices and ask for what we deserve. Honestly, I think that's a big part of what we need here.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for the question. Let's just try to get to as many other questions as we can. So yeah, we'll come on down. I see, ma'am, in the holding your hand up right there. Yep. And you come over to the microphone.
Before she starts, I'm going to say to the brother up there who had that question, we need to organize. We need to find people with similar interests that we're working on and come together and work together. We have to organize. That's where our strength is. It's always been. That's what we need to do right now.
Thanks, Michael. All right, another question from our audience. Go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Crystal. I'm a little nervous, so I'm sorry. I've been in the Bronx my entire life, and so I have about 2 comments. I'll try to keep it really brief. And so currently I work in Long Island City, Queens for a property owner, and that property owner lives and works in Queens their whole entire life, and they're trying to develop. And I firsthand now understand that when you have an ownership that has investment in the community gets built differently. And so like the Bronx Borough President was saying, there needs to be more Bronx ownership. And I believe that if the Bronx people were able to become the developers of the Bronx, we will see a different Bronx. And because the passion just gets infused with what gets built. So that's one thing that I really wanted to say. And Eli, to your question earlier, you said what specific areas in the Bronx do you think you can see that you want to see change in? Hip Hop Boulevard, Morris Heights. That's where I'm from. I've been there over 30 years. My family has been there for over 50 collectively. And this is a product of zoning. It's a retail desert. It's a food desert. There's hills everywhere. The senior people cannot get to their they cannot get to their supermarkets. It's difficult, but the infrastructure is there, the history is there. We have the Metro North, 1 stop away from Yankee Stadium, 2 stops away from Harlem, the Apollo, 3 stops away from Grand Central, and we have nothing there. We have nothing there, and it's a product of the zoning. We cannot build anything there. And so there's these empty lots, there's these empty playgrounds, and that are underutilized. And I just think that little strip, Hip Hop Boulevard, is a really great opportunity for something to happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just want to say we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Let's keep these to questions if we can. We will have time for audience ideas as well, but I want to make sure we actually hear folks who have questions. Hey, just see a show of hands if there are any others left. Oh, sorry, someone down here if you want to come on down. John, right here in the end row, black and white. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Darlene. I'm with Casita Maria Center for Arts and Education. We are over 90 years old, the first Latino serving organization in New York City. I am so encouraged to hear about the need for teen services and opportunities for young people. We lost a good chunk of our funding, $360,000, and we no longer have programming for high school. And so my question is, and we're working really hard to talk to funders, to talk to potential partners, to talk to politicians, elected officials. And so my question is, there's so many of us like this, right? So many nonprofit organizations that are in the same positions. So my question is, how do we get more investment? How do we get more people to come and recognize that without the arts, without investment in our young people, how do we move forward?
Thank you. You know what, let's grab one more question actually before we get to the answers. Yeah, see a gentleman in the blue polo shirt. We'll take 2 questions and then folks can jump in with answers that make sense.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
So with the non-for-profits organizations like Bronx Works, where I have experience after school, and also at SYEP, as a community leader, that I found different resources for families. But one thing I noticed is that there are a lot of non-for-profits, but the thing is a lot of families do not know about them. So how can these non-for-profits engage with the community to let them know that we are here?
That's great, thank you. And I'll just piggyback on that question and say, maybe not just how can not-for-profits do it, but what do you all need from the mayor or the next mayor of New York City, from elected officials to actually make sure more Bronx residents know about and can access the services that already exist?
I'll just say, we try to get the word out there. I mean, it's a matter of outreach and being visible. You know, sometimes programs are insular because they're just, you know, they're serving their population, and it's hard, you know, to get out in the community as much. But in terms of funding, you know, from the future mayor, you know, I mean, I talked about 4,000 after-school slots being eliminated from the Bronx. I mean, we need better funding, more funding. I mean, as a nonprofit, funding that actually supports a program. I mean, sometimes we'll get funding and it'll be the same amount, you know, for 5 or 6 years without any increase. Or you can't pay OTPS other than personnel expenses, or that you can't have indirect. So it's a number of things. But to your point, when I hear that people don't know about Bronx Works, because we are a large organization, I feel like we're not doing our job, and I'm sorry about that if you haven't connected with us. But we do have 50 to 60 sites here in the Bronx, so we should have name recognition out there, and I guess we need to do a better job at performing outreach to neighborhoods that don't know about us.
I mean, we have maybe just 1 minute left, but Geraldine or Lisa, you know, one more creative idea about getting access to what you already have on the ground in the Bronx?
So I haven't had a chance to speak, so I think it's important that you all hear me. I think that on the economic development side is, with the amount of building that's happening in the Bronx, there has to be an accountability to these private developers to reinvest in the community in which they're building. And the city government has to mandate it. You know, you go into some of these other communities and they fight, and so much money, MOUs are going, memorandums of understanding. The development in the Bronx is like we've never seen before. If all those companies, developers, and everyone else would invest a percentage of what they're spending on building in that area, nonprofits would not have as much issues as they do now, because there's millions of dollars that should be invested in our borough for these exact projects, and the developers and the private industry has to be held accountable.
Thanks, Lisa. All right, well, that is all the time we have for our amazing first panel. So join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you all so much for doing this today. Thanks all of you for being here, and we'll move right into some more great ideas.
Good morning. Yasmin Cruz, Executive Director of the Westchester Square Bid. My idea pitch was to launch a major initiative to beautify the Bronx. And I am a proud Bronxite all my life. The median rent of an apartment in Manhattan recently hit a record high of almost $4,200 a month, leading an increasing number of New Yorkers to consider living in the much more affordable Bronx. But what do these potential new residents see as they enter the borough? Graffiti under the bridge on Bruckner Boulevard, litter over the streets. The Bronx appearance not only renders the boroughs undesirable to outsiders, but also makes community members feel unsafe in their own neighborhoods. Indeed, studies have shown clean streets discourage criminal activity. The Bronx certainly has a way to go. To address this problem, our local elected officials should spearhead a large-scale project to beautify the Bronx with our Bronx Borough President. This initiative would entail identifying leaders in different neighborhoods who can speak to the resources that their community needs, and then empowering those community leaders to implement the cleanup. This beautification would, of course, extend just beyond getting rid of trash in the streets. The project would be about the creation of intentional communal spaces. For example, community members might turn graffiti-filled walls into mural sites, discouraging vandalism and allowing Bronx citizens to take pride in their borough's unique relationship to art. Designing the beautification program so that each neighborhood can self-determine will ensure maximum impact and an equitable allocation of resources. Overall, if the Bronx is cleaned and beautified, it will become a more desirable place to call home and will ultimately see widespread economic improvement. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ebony Cannon, and I am the Community School Director for Graham Wyndham at the Bronx Academy for Multimedia in Hunts Point. The Bronx has the highest prevalence of serious psychological distress than any other borough, with especially troubling rates in the South Bronx. Despite this, there is a staggering lack of mental health support for Bronx residents. While there have been some strides in advancing mental health services to support Bronx children and youth through schools, inpatient and outpatient treatment services, and the city's expansion of family enrichment centers, the remaining is a troubling lack of support for Bronx residents. Excuse me, guys. This service gap makes it difficult for Bronx adults to lead productive lives for themselves and their families. Oftentimes, private support is unaffordable, and mental health providers that are available fail to provide culturally competent care. To make the most of the city's focus on youth and children's mental health, the mayor should mandate that all city government programs providing mental health support to children, youth, and their families also extend those services to include their parents and caretakers. While it is essential to provide support to children and youth, when parents and caregivers are not mentally well, it is detrimental to the entire family. Mandating support for parents will lead the entire family to a more healthy and safe life. Furthermore, the city should address these issues through appreciative inquiry, which offers a transformative approach focusing on community strengths rather than their deficits. Appreciative inquiry provides for more valuable help and recognition. We do not have all the answers. This shift in perspective can empower Bronx residents and stakeholders to create solutions that deeply resonate with their unique needs and their aspirations. By encouraging and engaging the community in an appreciative inquiry process, we can begin by exploring what is already working well regarding mental health support, however limited it may be. Moreover, involving Bronx residents in co-creating and co-designing mental health services can lead to culturally competent care more responsive to the community's diverse backgrounds. This participatory approach ensures that the services developed are relevant, accessible, and tailored to the community's needs. Additionally, appreciative inquiry encourages collaboration among various stakeholders, including the local government, healthcare providers, schools, and community-based organizations. Implementing this framework can shift the Bronx mental health landscape from one of scarcity and struggle to one of connectedness and resilience, ultimately paving the way for healthier families and a stronger and more unified Bronx community. Thanks, guys.
Good morning. I'm Rachel Netches, the data researcher at the Center for an Urban Future. Thank you to our speakers today for their wonderful ideas, and we thought it would be a cool opportunity to share one of ours. A growing number of adult New Yorkers are re-enrolling at CUNY, at campuses like the one we're at today, because they realize how important having a college credential is to economic success in today's economy. In New York City, residents with a bachelor's degree are earned twice as much as those who only have a high school diploma. And while my colleagues and I at CUF have pushed city officials and private sector employers to do away with the college degree requirement for some jobs, the reality is that most of the city's fastest growing high wage and middle wage jobs in fields like tech, finance, healthcare, and the creative economy go to New Yorkers with a college credential. But though many New Yorkers who dropped out of college without earning a credential want to re-enroll, a lot of them encounter steep challenges when trying to do so. Our research found that one of the biggest challenges is that CUNY students who drop out before earning a degree end up owing the university money for an unpaid bill, often because other life financial challenges led them to withdraw or because they lost their financial aid. Few of those students can settle their final bills after leaving college or pay off previous balances in order to re-enroll. Experts told us that even an unpaid balance as small as $100 can derail working adults with some college but no degree from returning, or deter existing adult learners from returning for the next semester as they weigh whether to pay an overdue balance or an urgent expense such as rent or medical bill. To help more adult learners return to CUNY, complete their credentials, and boost persistence, city and state leaders should create an initiative we're calling Fresh Start, which would wipe clear any unpaid balance of up to $1,000 for CUNY students who started but have not completed their degree. Doing so would allow thousands more adult New Yorkers to re-enroll at CUNY, get across the college finish line, and get on the path to a better paying career. Thank you.
All right, great job, Rachel, and great job to all of our speakers so far today. Thank you. I'm just coming up here to say now we're turning it to you. We have just about 20 minutes where we're just going to take audience ideas, and we want to make this, we want to get as many people to share one idea, and we ask all of you to quickly say who you are, but to take no more than 1 minute, because we want to get as many people an opportunity today. So we're going to ask you to kind of raise your hands and keep your hands raised. We got a couple people on each row coming down. We've got one in the very top row up there, but I'm going to let our microphone handlers kind of go to the thing. Let's try to get to as many people as possible. We ask you to, when they call on you, to come to the edge of the aisle, because that's what Ostos has asked us to do, to not kind of send the microphone. They want us to kind of have everybody come to the aisle. So let's get the ideas flowing.
Morning, everyone. My name is Diane Cooper from Caregivers Outreach Mentorship Empowerment. My idea is that you all have probably experienced knowing someone who's a caregiver, or someone who was a caregiver, is a caregiver, and who most likely will be a caregiver in the near future. We all know the challenges that caregivers go through, financially, mentally, socially. So imagine an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old living in a home with someone who has a disability, an illness, or mental illness. Imagine our child going to school every day who have sat up maybe caring for grandma who had Alzheimer's, or who prepared a meal for someone who has MS and is wheelchair bound. It does have an effect upon their social life. It does have an impact upon their mental health, and it does have an impact upon their academic status. So my idea is that I feel that we need to do more research to see how many youth caregivers are actually here in the Bronx. We need to do research to see how many children are really caregivers, and we need to provide them with the support that they need. They're going to bed every night with fear that their parent may die, fear that someone in the school may know that they're living at home with somebody that has a disability, and ACS will come and take them out of the home. So there's more children than what's documented in research. They don't want to tell anyone, because we all are, some of us who work in certain occupations are reporters. So that's my idea, that for us to build a program for kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we got one out there. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Beverly Emmers. My idea is to make parent engagement an allowable work activity. Meaning if you're on public assistance, instead of sending you to the park to pick up trash, how about the schools engage you? How about there's other things? You get time for engaging your child in arts and culture. This is not only an idea, it's a policy proposal that the state is willing to adopt. Everything is in place. There's federal work law that gives provision to this. So I'm pitching my idea to bring attention to this. I have a packet. There's a policy working group that's working on this at CUNY Law, the Welfare Rights Initiative. And if you want public assistance, you shouldn't have to manipulate the system just because you want to engage your child in life. This is my story. This is my story. Parent engagement changed the trajectory of my life. And that parent coordinator, I hear a lot of people talking about education. We need to really make parents partners. We need parents. They will improve the quality of life. We need to make them partners. If you want to know more, please come up to me. I have packets. I can show you how. We need support. This policy proposal, which has a memorandum of understanding, DOE is ready to pilot it. They need to pilot it in the Bronx. All the data that was researched from Hunter College Urban Policy, it was done in the Bronx. So we need to bring it here. Please, we need your support to make this happen.
Thanks, Beverly. Thanks, Beverly. And I will add that Beverly's idea is also in our 50 Ideas report, so you can check it out there too. Next idea.
Oh, I'm fired up now. My name is Joel Mejia. I am the founder and one of the members of Me Oh My Hydroponic Farms. Look us up immediately at Me Oh My Farms. We are the only worker-owned hydroponic farm in the Bronx, New York City, New York State. If you don't know about hydroponics, it is not growing ganja, it is about growing food. We have been growing high-quality microgreens and mushrooms in an apartment building for the last 2 years, and we just got a contract with Banana Kelly. Please come see us, 970 Prospect. We're doing farm tours. If you've never been to a hydroponic farm that is worker-owned, growing incredible superfoods in the Bronx, come see me. Don't leave here without looking up Me Oh My Farms, because this is a solution that's been in front of you for 5 years. If you've never heard of us, I'm telling you, look us up right now.
All right, thank you.
Bless up.
Next idea on this side. We got one? Let's go. Keep your hands up. We want to get the mics to you right when the other person's speaking.
Hi, my name is Anthony Wills Jr. I'm Artistic Director of Artistic Pride Productions. I believe that art is a tool that you can help to improve yourself, your community, and society as a whole. I believe that through art, not only is it a thing for extracurricular, but through art we learn to communicate, to tell our story, who we are. We learn to deal with our emotions, our frustrations, our aggravations. We learn to accept one another and see the beauty in all the things that are around us. And the more that we do that and engage in that, the better a community that we are. And we can cover things from beautifying the city by making murals out of graffiti. And many of the things that were talked about come from teaching art as a tool, and art as something not just to make you famous or to get you on TV, but to help improve your quality of life. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's truly inspiring to be here. And the idea began with a simple yet profound philosophy, what it truly means to be human. At its core, it's about recognizing that we need each other. Janus is dedicated to fostering professional growth and strengthening local economies. By combining the best aspects of social media and geek platforms, we help young adults gain the experience they need to succeed in their industries, while also expanding the reach and visibility of professionals, experts, and small businesses. Our goal is to equip them with the right tools to uplift our communities. Think of Janus as LinkedIn meets Amazon, but with a stronger focus on human interaction rather than vanity metrics or purely transactional exchanges. We would love to collaborate with incredible people like you, artists, entrepreneurs, and policymakers to do our part in building a better Bronx and a more human-centered world, especially in an era of AI and the rise of robotics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Max Nobby. I'm born and raised and live in the Bronx. And a big reason why the Bronx is a symbol of urban blight in part is because of the sensationalized portrayals in mainstream media. If it bleeds, it leads too often, and in Hollywood as well, scandalized, misrepresented. I am the executive director of the Public Service Multimedia Network of the People of the Bronx. Participatory media is what we do, and we're providing services for the last 3 decades with experiential learning and career building experiences for the students of the Bronx. Many have gotten careers in the industry as media leaders, as well as citizen journalism and digital inclusion. We are training emerging communities in the Bronx to produce multilingual content that speaks to our communities in the language that they natively speak, as well as anywhere you go in the Bronx, you'll find an opportunity to join us in our studios and take media education classes. We broadcast the Merrill Forum that the Borough President and Jonathan referred to earlier. We're broadcasting the Merrill Forum in partnership with community media centers like Bronxnet across the city on Monday, featuring arts and culture and the concerns around that. A big part of the reason why the Bronx is now a symbol of urban renewal is because of the creative community. We need to provide the tools for people, and that's why we partner with great organizations like Casita Maria, Teatro Pregones, and this institution, Ostos for the Arts and Culture. We are stronger together, and I gotta tell you, Eli, what keeps me up at night is in this era of toxic algorithms, media consolidation, we have tremendous polarization and addictive media feeds. The algorithm does not favor community engagement. There needs to be a community engagement quotient in the algorithm. There needs to be support for these underfunded community media institutions like Bronxnet, like Brick. A beautiful studio in Harlem shut down just 2 weeks ago. This is a crisis. This is our democracy at stake. We are stronger together. It's about community engagement. We partner with so many institutions in this room. My idea, or our idea, would be to come up with a series of principles around community engagement. As the borough president would say, a strive and thrive quotient in the algorithm. Okay, so we can do better. And you know, I gotta say, I am losing sleep about what's happening, but there's tremendous opportunity because there's so much churn. But collectively, we are stronger. We are stronger together. We are gonna be gathering in Albany for a Tech Equity Access Media conference with elected leaders and community leaders, as well as community people on Monday, April 24th. Please join us. We have a free buses going up, and but you know, any way you can join us, we're going to stand stronger together. We'll have pop-up TV studios in our state capitol. So we are stronger together. We can strive and thrive and rise together. And I thank you very much. Keep Bronx strong. Para siempre.
Thank you. We got about 10 minutes left and a lot of hands, so everybody keep it to 1 minute if you can. Thank you.
Good morning, all you beautiful New Yorkers and Bronxites. My name is Jose Garcia. I'm from East New York in Brooklyn. I want to ask, though, how many people here are involved with your local community boards? Oh, that's much better than what I used to see. And the thing is that if you think about community boards, right, they're supposed to be the voice of the people to government, right? Some of these issues, like the gentleman that pointed out the hydroponic farm, or the reason we don't know about it is because we all live in our own silos or isolation. But community boards are a chance for us to come together and be aware of what's each other. So make it a point to get involved with your local community board. In fact, there's actually a call for people to get on the board, right? The call for the board nominations is up. If you haven't been on a community board, go and sign up to be on the board. They need people like you to represent, because this is how legislators and decision makers and policymakers really hear these issues.
Awesome. Hey, I also want to say to everybody, these are fantastic ideas. Don't forget, we have a panel of elected officials that's going to be on next. Many of them are here already. So make sure that you include some ideas for what our government leaders in the Bronx and citywide should be doing. Cool.
I got an idea. Hi, my name's Gregory Jost. I do work with Banana Kelly, and we are incubating Me Oh My. We're incubating the Bronx People's Federal Credit Union. We're a community-owned landlord, right? The people run the housing, And one thing we need to do to support the existing housing and the new housing, we're talking about community land trusts and everything, is to stop the extraction of wealth out of our borough through insurance redlining and how much they're charging all of us just for insurance. Doesn't help any of our people. The operating costs, why the rent is high, just find out what we're paying in insurance. A big problem, and I don't have the answer, but this is why people need to come together and talk about this, is who's making money off this? Injury law firms, okay? Just something to look at. Again, I don't have the answer, but a lot of the money, and if we want to build wealth, we have to stop the extraction first.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Judith Insel. I'm the executive director of the Bronx Arts Ensemble, a 53-year-old institution. If you've not heard about us, we have probably been to your community already over those 53 years to perform or teach in your schools. I just want to also reiterate the idea that I gave to be part of the 50 ideas to help the Bronx. Arts is important in many ways, but we very rarely talk about the fact that arts is actually a workforce to enter into. So workforce development to become an artist is a real thing. So I invite you to read my idea, but the primary focus of it is the fact that if we do not teach arts education in our Bronx public schools, you will not see the faces of the institution of arts and culture in New York City actually represent the actual residents of New York City. I am an artist. I'm a performing artist, and I go and I perform, and I very rarely see anybody in an orchestra with me who looks like me. So I was born and raised in the Bronx, and the tools that I received through my training in arts education got me all the way through up to be a professional violist in orchestras, in chamber music, on Broadway. If you ever get a chance to see who is in the pit of an orchestra on Broadway, there's very few people of color down there with me, because we haven't been doing a good job of training our students to actually get to that direction. So just take a moment and think about the fact that arts education is workforce development.
Thank you. And check out Judith's idea in our report.
Thank you for having this today. My name is Denise Rosario Duce. I'm the executive director of the Bronx Children's Museum. We were the last borough to get a children's museum. That says a lot about the way New York City invested in our community and our children. And before I was executive director of the museum, a long time ago, I was a graffiti artist. I was a graffiti artist because I still am in so many ways. I've actually grown up to be a children's book author, and my first book came out last June. Nice. But when I think back why I would use the streets as my canvas, it was because I didn't have a space to express my artistry. And that same little girl who came to the United States, didn't speak English, didn't have a safe space to be able to express herself through her art, resorted to vandalizing our streets. I don't do that anymore. And it's because I had a youth program that invested in me and showed me how can I apply my creativity and my abilities to be able to create resources for artists. So I got my MBA when I grew up. And I think that's where we need to spend our money. It saddened me when someone here said 4,000 slots were eliminated here in the Bronx for after-school programs. They stated it was half of the removal in New York State was in the Bronx. New York City. We're also seeing that we lost 500 preschool programs in the Bronx during COVID. So it's not just at the teenage level, it's also at the youngest level. And we're experiencing that. We're feeling the repercussions of that at the Bronx Children's Museum. We see the abuelas coming in with their grandchildren. We see the teenagers who are interning with us. We just hired a few of them as our full-time staff. And it's been amazing to teach them how do you develop an exhibit? How do you design one and then create coding for our digital exhibits? It's been amazing. But we need help be able to really create more opportunities for our kids. We're creating a digital tech lab at the Bronx Children's Museum. We need the funding, we need the support to be able to bring in those interns, show them how you can apply your art, how to use that technology to be able to create these wonderful exhibits inside the museum, and then be able to use it beyond that. So I wanted to share that idea because a graffiti artist can grow up to be one day the executive director of a museum.
All right,
So
thank you. Thank you. Up there.
Morning, everyone. So my name is Adrian Cacho, senior organizer with Open Plans, where we advocate for safe and accessible public spaces and streets. And I think an idea that I have is definitely investing in our parks throughout the borough. The borough president mentioned it earlier. We have the most green space throughout the city, and it very often gets overlooked. So investing in our parks, we only get 1% of the budget. That's unacceptable. We need to invest in our spaces. And we also need to invest in the groups throughout the borough that are doing the work to sort of beautify and ensure that our spaces are safe and accessible. Bronx River Lines, the Bronx is Blooming, and other folks who might be present today. And then on top of that, just ensuring that folks have sort of the ability to access programmings that come with said spaces as well. So alongside the two things I mentioned, ensuring that those programs are ongoing and flowing. And that's my idea, and I'll be around if folks have other sort of things they want to pitch as far as the spaces we have throughout the borough. Thank you.
Thank you. We got one on this side.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Malcolm Gray. I am the manager of neighborhood development for the Marshall Preservation Corporation. Over the course of the last year, we acquired a $1.2 million earmark from Senator Gillibrand and Senator Chuck Schumer, where we created an initiative called Beyond Survival. At the Marshall Preservation Corporation, we are a local development corporation. We oversee 3 economic corridors: the White Plains Road into 241st Corridor, the Jerome Gun Hill Bid, and the Bainbridge and 204th Street Corridor. With Beyond Survival, we brought financial literacy, we brought financial literacy, we redid awnings, and we also created a healthy storefront initiative for many of our business owners that are in those corridors. From stats from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, over 66% of business owners survive past 3 years, and 50% of business owners survive past 5 years. What I'm pitching is that we need an expansion of financial literacy and tax preparation for small business owners, especially here in the Bronx. The issue with that is that many of our small business owners do not have the profit margins or are not able to acquire the education to be able to navigate the financial landscapes to be successful and survive towards the 10-year mark. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got, please keep it going fast because we only got a couple minutes. Let's go.
Hi, my name is James. I'm a software engineer. I do want to talk about the education and high school programs in computer science. I feel like it should be a better system as it is. It should be a way better system. I don't think people in like high school should be learning like Scratch or some weird language. I think they should learn like the fundamentals like C#, C++, JavaScript, and know the core functionalities of programming. Even if we have AI, right? AI is not as perfect as some people might think. Some people needs to know and understand the code and what they're seeing. I don't think you have to wait for college to understand programming, because there's some kids that program way earlier before they even get to college. So I really feel like you should really hone in onto the sciences. I think the sciences is really great. I think any high school student, do I have any software engineers? No, okay, I'm the only one. Maybe give you an example. Anybody can do a for loop. A for loop is something that I can get information. It's very easy to understand. There's different concepts that might come harder at times, but the fundamentals is very important. And I also want to say this. I know I'm taking up too much time, but this is for people in the Bronx. I would say that as someone that lives in the Bronx, we do have certain problems here, especially with family. I know that, we have people that's trying to help the Bronx, but it's also your guys' part too, because in the Bronx, you do have a lot of broken families and don't have a lot of people that, really guide us to a certain place. Like, it's okay to change the environment, right? But that's only half the problem. So it's like, we need to be more like, I would say like more mothers and fathers to other people, Not everybody's a mother or father, but, still help like, the common person. So I think, we should, honestly try to do better, even when cleaning up the streets, that's something that, take pride in. That needs to change in itself. But thank you for listening. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
Good morning. I almost really don't need this, but I'll do it for folks that are on the internet. So my name is Chauncey Young. I am education director at New Settlement, and I'm a Highbridge resident for over 20 years, working in the Bronx, living in the Bronx, organizing in the Bronx. I'm going to focus, though, on, instead of education today, I'm going to focus on environmental justice and access for community members. We started off talking about how the Bronx is the greenest borough in the city. That is 100% true, but it's also inequitably distributed. We have the largest parks in the Bronx. We have Pelham Bay, and we have Van Cortlandt in the northern section of the Bronx. But so many of our communities in the South Bronx, in the West Bronx, have no access to their parks and have no access to their waterfront. We have been organizing for over 30 years groups trying to reconnect community members to the Harlem River waterfront. It is a huge issue, and it is something that every year we are losing more and more of our waterfront. In 2008, Michael Johnson and I went to City Council for the Lower Concourse rezoning, advocating for a greenway along the waterfront as the development happened. The city changed those plans, though, unfortunately. And as those buildings have gone up on the waterfront, it has not been for our community that green space is made, but it's become public space for the building residents because it's not designed for communities to use it as access. It's not advertised as space for the community. So we are looking for a transformational moment right now for all of our electeds, all of our organizations in this borough to get on board and really create a Harlem River Greenway for the community. Folks might not know, but the previous mayor, Mayor de Blasio, committed $1 billion to developing a greenway around the border of Manhattan, which is wonderful. Manhattan deserves a greenway. But the Bronx at that same time we lost acres of parkland. I love the Hip Hop Museum. Rocky is a partner of ours, but that park was parkland, 4 acres of parkland that was built of affordable housing on 4 acres of parkland. We have 6 acres of parkland just north of that is used for parking for Yankees Stadium games, not accessible for the communities. We're working right now with the mayor's office, with the DOT, to do a greenway plan from Randall's Island up to Van Cortlandt Park. But Metro North is saying that we can't have access in the north for 5 blocks because they've decided to move the trash that they manage for the tri-state area from Manhattan to the Bronx, and they're taking away Bronx communities' access points from 230th Street to 225th Street. So we are asking all of you to get involved, get organizing with us, come out and support it. The DOT is planning with us, but unfortunately this is the Bronx, so the DOT is planning that greenway on streets and not on our waterfront. One last thing to notice, because I know I'm over my time, we are also advocating for free, a lot of folks went over, but it's okay. We're organizing for free canoeing and kayaking on the Harlem River. We have no free public kayaking, canoeing programs in this borough on the Harlem River. We're the only borough that does not have free access for our community members to get out and do boating. We also are 62 out of 62 counties in the state of New York in terms of health disparities. So these things need to be addressed. We need our electeds, we need our community organizations, and we need our community residents to get on board and fight for equity for our borough. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to do one last idea for the Bronx.
Thank you. I will try to keep it as short as possible as the last speaker. My name is Nicholas Stanton. I am the proud CPO, Chief Program Officer of an organization called Drive Change. We work to support justice-involved youth. The Bronx is currently the leader in juvenile detention, and it's a call to action to all of us and our electeds to support programs that support the youth, to reduce the rates of recidivism. It's one thing to get out, it's another thing to stay out, and that's through workforce development, because workforce development is social development. And so it's a call to action to all of us to not end the conversations in this room, but to really be thought leaders and partners to nonprofits that have a proven method that is sustainable and scalable, to not be seen as a Band-Aid solution, but rather a thought partner in the process. And so once again, my name is Nicholas Stanton. I work for Drive Change, and I would love to continue the conversation with each of you today, how we can make the Bronx a more equitable place. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish we could keep going. I know there's a lot more hands, but we got to move on. We're already about 10 minutes late, and I want to thank all of our electeds for being a little patient with starting this last panel. But we want to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas as well. But thanks so much. You know, Michael Johnson earlier said a few times we should listen. And we've just done a little bit of that the last 30 minutes here, so I appreciate all you sharing your ideas. Now let's keep it going.
Just grab the end so I can see all of you. Hey, council member, anywhere you like is good. I'll just grab the end so I can see everybody. Get right in the middle. Yeah, that's perfect. All right.
That was kind of, almost fell.
Good morning. One last time to our audience. Thank you all so much for being here today, and thank you to our elected officials for joining us. It's such a thrill, such a pleasure to have you with us. I'm fired up, I have to say. It's been an incredible morning so far. We've heard some incredibly good ideas, some really thoughtful perspectives on the Bronx's strengths, many strengths, and continuing challenges, and most importantly, what we need to be doing to move these issues forward. But I can think of really no better group of leaders across this borough to join me for this conversation than you all. So let me just briefly mention to our audience, folks maybe need no introduction, who I'm joined by today. Their full bios are in your packets if you scan that QR code. So let me just briefly say we're joined today by a new Assembly Member Emerita Torres. We're so thrilled to have you. Welcome. Council Member Althea Stevens as well. And Assembly Member Amanda Septimo. So thank you so much for joining us today. I want to begin with some of the positive energy that we're feeling in the room today. Despite the challenges, we've heard already that so many of the ideas for the Bronx's future are already right here in the Bronx. That so much of what we need to be doing as a city is listening, as Jonathan mentioned, as Michael mentioned, and building on what's working. So I want to ask the three of you each, when you look at your neighborhoods, at your constituencies, at the borough today, what's something that you see is really working that not only Bronxites should know about, but that the mayor or the next mayor of New York City, that other elected officials and city leaders should know about because it's working, because it's happening here in the Bronx, and because we need to do more of it?
I'm happy to start. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all. There's so many incredibly powerful faces in the room. I want to highlight an organization that represents, I think, really great work happening in the workforce development space. And she's here. I see Geraldine Rodriguez in the back. The Knowledge House is an incredible organization. But the Knowledge House, Per Scholas, Meta Bronx, there are a few organizations that have really leaned into the idea that the world has changed and work has changed and opportunities for growth and stability economically have also changed. And when you're talking about a place like the Bronx, I have a South Bronx bias. When you're talking about the Bronx and our community, we have historically, and it remains true today, some of the highest out of school, out of work population, right? So that's 16 to 24-year-olds who aren't working or aren't in school. And that can be hard to get folks like that back on track and get them to a place where they're gonna find economic stability and get to a place where where there's opportunity for them. The Knowledge House, Per Scholas, Meta Bronx, and some other organizations have really harnessed the power of technology and opened the door and the pathways in a real way for people who maybe got off the path of traditional schooling and said it didn't work out for them for whatever reason, have opened the door, have created a path where people can come into these programs, get the training that they need, and come out making money that is interrupting generational cycles of poverty that have gripped our community for too long. But most importantly, establishing a foundation in the South Bronx, in the whole Bronx, in the Bronx for a workforce of tomorrow. That, I think, is tremendously powerful and important, and I think working really well, and we're doing everything we can to scale and grow those programs as much as we can.
Thanks, well, I would just like to say I think what's working well are the people. You know, I often am saying I love the Bronx because when you come here, you can feel the culture, the vibrance, and the love that we have for one another. And because we know gentrification has taken place across the city, when you come here, you don't feel that. You feel community. So, you know, I think even with the lack of resources that we've been able to get, we've been able to really move mountains. We know that a lot of times other folks and other boroughs sees the Bronx as a dumping ground. I've had so many conversations with people that are like, have you ever been robbed in the Bronx? I'm like, what are you talking about? There's crime everywhere. I see the stats. And so even this projection that is often portrayed, we are so resilient against that. And even to say, I was in youth development for 20 years, I think our young people is our biggest asset. I consistently go across the city because I'm the chair of Children and Youth Services, where I'm meeting with young people, but it is something about our young people in the Bronx where they know that they're up against so much and they're fighting each and every day. So even thinking about what's working for us, I think one of the things that we all need to make sure that we're doing, especially in times like this, that we're supporting our young people, we're stopping and saying hello to our young people, and we're continuing to pour into them, because I am telling you, there's nothing like a kid from the Bronx, and we really need to make sure that we're investing and supporting and loving on them at this moment.
Thank you. It's great to be on a panel with 3 women of color legislators from the Bronx. I just want to say that. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Look, +1 to what my colleagues have said. The Bronx has gone through an incredible economic transformation in many ways. At the same time, we live the joys and the challenges of being from the Bronx. And in many ways, some of that economic transformation hasn't really trickled down. In some ways it has. And I think some of the most powerful things that I think about when I think about the Bronx is the years and years of investment of voices and coalition building that have fought, everyone in this room, whether it's WEDCO, I see WEDCO in the room, I see representatives of the Bronx White Coalition in the room that have fought for years and years for the kinds of transformations that we're seeing now. I think about the Bronx River and what we did to clean up and transform the Bronx River so we can have access to that particular waterfront. I think a lot about what my colleague, Assemblymember Septimo said about out of school and out of work youth, and making sure we have that economic connectedness in the Bronx, and making sure that we're connected not just within the Bronx, but within the entire borough, and having access to our anchor institutions so that we can access and our young people can access the jobs in those institutions, not just for today, but for the future. So I'm excited about that because I think that's happening, but I do think we need to work harder.
Thanks, Assemblymember. Well, let me tee you up to talk a little bit more about one of the ways maybe we need to work a little harder. And it's actually inspired by, and if folks haven't seen this, watching you introduced to the New York State Legislature with your, new daughter, I believe, on your hip, right? And if folks haven't seen it, it's really like a beautiful, testament to the power of parents serving in our government and mothers in particular. But there's a big challenge out there when it comes to helping more parents and especially mothers in the workforce be able to achieve their economic dreams, and that's childcare. So I would love to ask, maybe starting with you, Assembly Member, but for any of you who have specific ideas, what would you like to see the city and the state do next to address our childcare crisis?
Well, we don't know what we don't measure. So I want to start with that. I think there are so many new mothers, new moms that are working, and I don't know what we're doing as a city and as a state to measure that. To measure the, I think we know more or less the cost that the cost of childcare. But if you have one child versus two, it doubles, or in some cases it may treble, depending on the needs of your child. I have 2 young children under 2 that both require childcare and to pay out of pocket for childcare. We need more vouchers. We need to change the system when we think about source of income discrimination. Many childcare centers don't accept a voucher from the city. Why is that? We should be questioning why that is. Why do we have concentrations of low-income mothers sending their children to particular childcare centers? Childcare vouchers should be accepted across the city and across the state, regardless of your source of income. So
that's what I was going to say. They don't pay nobody. That's why nobody wants to take the vouchers. So.
And then we need to change that as well. We need to, our caregiving workforce, we need to pay them more. We need to pay them what they're due.
So I'll go next. So I just want to also just even reiterate, I don't think this is a woman issue. This is a family issue. And for me, I need to make sure we're centering that as part of the conversation, because so often it's as if like, oh, working women. No, this is a family issue, because not only women are being impacted by this, but fathers as well, and they're a huge part of this conversation. And also just say, like, especially men of color are so much more involved in their kids' lives, so they are so impacted by this. So I wanted to make sure we're centering it around that. And also even just being in city council, we know that women legislate differently. And so we have been legislating around childcare this whole entire time. But I will be clear, I have a lot of issues with the system, with the childcare system that we have now in the city, because there's a couple of things. One, we had a mayor who was here before who ran on universal 3K and never really invested or fixed the system so that it actually can function. And so now we have a system now that is broken that no one wants to talk about. So we have a system where it's really hard to get certified to be in a child care facility. We have a system where your sites cannot be certified because we have lack of DOH inspectors to inspect them. We do not have enough teachers because we have not invested in that workforce. And there's all these things that no one is talking about, but we're just saying, let's continue to expand. And so this is one of the things that I've been trying to put in the forefront, that we cannot talk about expansion if we're not talking about actually fixing the system that needs to be fixed in order to get there. And so the other thing that I'm always worried about is we have like this 3K program, but now that I'm the chair of children and youth, because I have oversight over ACS, we also have a whole nother voucher system on the ACS side that actually has been working a lot better, but no one is talking about, right? No one is talking about how they have it's a tiered system around income. Families have more access to it. The state has been giving them more money to expand, but we've only been focused on a system that hasn't been working. And so what I've been really trying to do is connect the dots and say, if we have a system that's working, let's see how we can merge the two and figure it out, right? How many young people are on vouchers and that are given to them from ACS, and how do we have young people who are going to 3K? And until we have people who have the will to say, let's sit down and fix it and sit at the table, we're gonna be in the mess that we're in. And so I've literally been trying to wrangle my colleagues to say, how are we gonna fix the system this budget cycle? Because we've missed the mark for the last 3 budget cycles.
You know, I'm not one of those electeds that needs to just speak to be heard. I think my colleagues have done a great job covering it. I'm just going to +1 what they've said, and I think at the state level we're doing what we can to make sure that we're plugging all those holes, giving the resources where we can, but we really defer to our partners in the city, and that's why I'm really grateful that we have champions like Councilmember Stevens.
I love that answer as well, because we want to keep it moving to some other areas. Let me ask one more about affordability, and that is, you know, the Bronx has actually added more new housing units, or in 2023, for the first time than any other borough, for the first time since we've been tracking the data. But I don't know that a lot of Bronx residents are necessarily feeling that their lives have gotten more affordable. So I'd like to ask you all about housing. One idea, city or state, that you think could really help further address the housing affordability crisis in the Bronx and help more residents feel like they can actually afford to stay here?
Well, I think that's a really good point, and I think you're very right that it actually gives me a little bit of anxiety to hear like the Bronx is leading, right? Because we hear our folks all the time say affordable for who? it doesn't feel affordable for anyone who lives here. And so it actually just feels like the manifestation of gentrification kind of working its way in, when slowly but surely people who make more and more and more than you are becoming your neighbors every day. And so one of the things that I would like to see happen from a policy perspective, and this is something that we really are always fighting about on the state level, we went through a lot of sort of policy drama as it related to housing last year in the budget, and we were able to kind of replace the 421A program that really wreaked havoc on communities like the Bronx. And we replaced it with a new program, but that program doesn't necessarily incentivize building in communities like ours. One of my favorite housing projects on the planet probably is the redevelopment of Spofford. How Spofford sort of got demolished and rebuilt, and it was with an important community partner, the Point CDC, which I love, and I come out of their programming as a young person, but I think it represents the power of what happens when you have a nonprofit that's rooted in community, when you have a developer who's willing to recognize the value and say, you know what, maybe I'm going to make a little less money, but I'm ultimately going to make money, and prioritize the needs of local folks. So you have rents in Spofford that are truly affordable. And we're talking a few $100s for people to live in brand new, very nice spaces that will be here for decades to come. That's how it should be. It shouldn't be a privilege. It shouldn't be luck. It shouldn't be that you rolled the dice and got lucky this time. And so I'd love to see us craft a state program that incentivizes building in communities like ours. It does make it more expensive for the state, but it's something that I think is worth investing in.
So I'll just add a couple of things. So one of the things that I've seen since I've been in office, and as you guys know, City Council, we're very, very involved in building. We have oversight over land use, and so I'm in a lot of these conversations and projects. But what I'm seeing specifically, and I'll start with my district and I'll focus there. In my district specifically, we have gotten an overload of extremely low income housing. And whether it's supportive or shelters, like those are the projects that are often brought to my district. So what I'm seeing is happening is, if you go away to college, you come back, my district is not where you go. If you get married and you guys have a two-family income, we're pricing people out even here in our district when we're saying affordable. So for me, one, we never talk about home ownership. That is not even part of the conversation, which is totally missing from this because we're losing population because people want to own. And then we're also not building for people to be able to scale up in certain communities. And so not only are we losing people who are at the lower level income, but we're also losing people who are growing their income. They're leaving the borough, right? So they're going to Queens, they're going to Brooklyn because they're able to buy homes. And so for me, it's thinking about when they say affordable for who, we need to say, what are our income levels in our district, and making sure that we are hitting all those targets, right? So when we're talking about extremely low income, yes, we need to make sure that we have units for them, but we also need to make sure that we have units for people who are middle class that we never talk about. And we also need to make sure that we're not actually having brain drain, because again, I am seeing people leave my district in droves, where I've had young people come back from college and be like, well, none of these buildings have amenities. And so I think when we're saying, oh, we're seeing a lot of gentrification, that's because we're not building for the people that's here and really making sure they're part of the conversation. One of the reasons why I fought like hell against City of Yes, because it did not benefit us. It did not, and it does not benefit districts like mine because we've already done our fair share of affordable housing. We've led the way. My colleague Salamanca has built the most affordable housing in the city. We have boroughs who are not building any affordable housing or having any diverse incomes or doing any of it. So we're taking up the burden. So for me, an idea of thinking about how do we move forward and say, what do we need? We need to be focused on home ownership programs so that we can have people owning and staying in these communities. We need to be looking at tiered incomes and making sure that we are looking at what the average incomes are in our district. And we also need to make sure we're thinking about economic development, because we're also building in places where there's no transportation, there's no activities for young people, there's no laundromats, there's no daycares. And so thinking about how are we not just building to say we're building units, but we're actually building communities.
Thank you, Councilmember. I just want to acknowledge we're joined today also by Assemblymember Carinas Reyes. Assemblymember, great to have you with us. You know, if you don't mind, Assemblymember, let me turn to a topic that, Assemblymember Reyes, your arrival reminded me of something that we think is incredibly important to the affordability conversation, but it's really the other side of the conversation, which we talked about a little bit earlier, helping more residents boost their incomes, get on the path to good jobs, build community wealth. More folks can afford the Bronx if more folks can actually generate the incomes that are necessary to live a living wage and a livable life. And one of the pieces of that puzzle, as we see it, is CUNY. I mentioned this, that was my way of saying, I know we have at least 2 CUNY graduates up there on the stage with me, maybe 3. And we're here at Ostos Community College, such a crucial part of the Bronx's opportunity infrastructure. So I guess my question here is maybe in 2 parts. If we want to help more Bronx residents get on the path to the middle class, access the good jobs that are growing, not just here in the borough, but all over the city, what's one thing that you would like to see the city or the state do to invest in CUNY's ability to deliver on its economic mobility mission? That should be on for you. Oh. Should we try the microphone right next to you and we can do a little technical. There we go.
So I'm assuming that question's for me.
I think I'd love to hear from all of you, but yeah, go for it. Thank you.
So I am the sponsor in the assembly of the New Deal for CUNY because we want to re-envision CUNY as serving the people of New York the way it used to back in the 70s, when my parents were able to go to CUNY for free. And more we're seeing how higher education has become cost prohibitive for so many families, particularly families in the Bronx. And CUNY is a world-class, high-quality education right here in our borough, and we should be expanding access for that. So we are fighting for that on a state level, right, to create that investment. I was happy to see that the governor in her state budget proposal did put in free community college, right? And we're kind of working through what that means. And look, I don't want to be political, but when we look at what happened in the last election and how so many young people particularly voted for, and we like to think voted against their own interests, I think there is a sentiment amongst young people that there are just not opportunities for them. They are frustrated with the fact that they can't put food on the table, they can't put a roof over their heads, they can't support a family. And a lot of that has to do because they've been shut out of opportunities, whether that be higher education, whether that be technical training. The economy of today is not the economy of yesterday, where you can, with a high school diploma, earn a salary that's gonna be sustainable for a family. That's just not real. And we can't continue to tell young people that, you can do whatever you wanna do and you don't have to go to college. You need some training, whatever it is, after high school to be able to compete. One of the things that we've been working on in the Bronx as well is a Bronx-wide plan. We want to give resources to our local nonprofits to train a workforce to be able to compete for federal and state grants and global grants, to have people in the Bronx be able to work in the green economy, retrofit our buildings. A lot of the health disparities that we see in the Bronx is because we have an aging infrastructure that is not compatible with the 21st century. But people need the skills to do that. And we have nonprofits that are ready, willing, and able to train our workforce to do that, to compete and fight for those dollars. We need to make that investment in them. So that's a plan that a lot of my colleagues in the State Assembly and the State Senate, particularly the Bronx delegation, has been fighting for. There are a lot of things that we can do, but really, really giving people the tools to be able to compete is so important.
Happy to add, I think we also need to be doing more on-the-job training. I have a family member, for example, who is trying to break into a new field, artist by training, and has much of the transferable skills you might need to be in another sector, and is not getting looked at, is applying for job after job after job. We need more on-the-job training. We need more apprenticeships. And I know, college degree is absolutely important, but we need more career and technical education opportunities for our young people so they can transition.
Assemblymember. But, I want one follow-up question there. And actually, Assemblymember Septimo, you brought this up earlier. We have these amazing workforce development organizations in the Bronx that are really working. And you mentioned a couple like the Knowledge House and Perscolas that can really show the evidence that those programs are leading to significant economic mobility gains. When I look at some of those programs, one thing that strikes me is even the most effective among them are still only serving a few dozen or maybe a few hundred people a year in the Bronx. And I'm wondering, what can we do to change that? Is there something that the city or the state can do to scale up what's working? Or as we heard earlier from Debbie Roman from Perscolas, that they know that something as simple as a stipend can boost retention and completion rates by as much as 18%, but they don't have funding to do that from public sources. So any thoughts about how do we build or grow what we know is actually working to produce economic mobility?
Sure, I'm happy you asked. One of the things that we've been sort of quietly working on at the state level this year is to see if we can get a Bronx Tech Plan going, which would pour $10 million a year for the next 10 years into some of our tech organizations that we know are doing this work well, to give them the ability to scale in a meaningful way. And that's sort of the policy kind of what are you doing answer. But I think what's needed in sort of a larger scale is reimagining how we actually govern. I think there is a gap between how we actually do work and how things work on the ground. And many times the policies that we're setting forth are aspirational. And so we want everyone to go to college and we want everyone to get that experience, and so we fund accordingly. But the reality is that people have competing priorities and make it so that they can't dedicate X amount of hours in their week to just being in a classroom. And so we need to maybe consider the fact that if you want people to be able to dedicate their time to studies and trainings, then you need to give them a stipend that will replace the income that they're losing from giving up that job that they need to pay their bills. And that, I think, when we think about government and when we think about giving people money, it seems to bring people to a place that feels uncomfortable. But the reality is that we're never going to solve these problems if we don't meet them at the point where they exist. And so I think that's part of what makes those programs that exist fantastic, that they're really grounded in the reality of people's everyday lives, like stipending, like the dynamic scheduling of when the programs take place, how long they are, et cetera. That I think is a really, really important thing that we really need to lean into adopting and governing.
I wanted to add a little bit on that. So since I got in city council, one of the things that I've been saying is we need to reimagine the workforce for young people. We have the highest unemployment rates for young people between the ages of 16 and 21. And one of the things that I'm finding, we don't listen to young people. We think we know what they want, and so we continue to create programs that we think are nice. But we're not actually working with the young people to say, what is it that you want? I worked in youth development for 20 years, and a lot of it is trickery of thinking about how do we get them to understand that this is what they need, and so this is what they want. And I go into programs where they're doing good things, but they have 10 young people. And so for me, it's always like, well, then you don't have a good program. Because if you cannot attract the young people who are standing out there telling me that they want a job, but they're not in your program, then we need to reimagine about what does your recruitment look like? What does your strategy look like? And so, I think, one, we need to be listening to young people, asking them what they want. And also, we just need to reimagine. There are programs that are working that gives young people skills that they need. And also, it's about exposing them. Sometimes young people don't know that they're interested in something because they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so, I think about programs like Learn to Work, LTW programs, which is here. We've been cutting away at that program, but that's a program where high school students get to work while they're in high school, and they get a stipend, they get paid per hour. But we've been cutting that program year after year, and no one's really talking about it. We've been not investing in our vocational schools. Vocational schools are actually being, scaled down and chopped up into smaller schools. When we're thinking about CTE schools, those are not really existing where you can graduate high school and have certification already. And so for me, it's thinking about, one, we need to reimagine what workforce looks like, because SYP is nice, but what do they do between September and June? You don't have a job and there's no options, because young people are competing with 30-year-olds for jobs at the Foot Locker now. And most jobs will not hire you if you're not 18. And then when you are 18, you have no experience because no one hired you before that. And so we're in this weird cycle where I feel like folks are not listening to the young people and listening to what they want. We are not creating programs that are attracting the young people. And we're also not just investing where it needs to be invested, because we have programs that have shown success that we keep cutting away at the city and the state level.
Thank you, Councilmember. I want to ask a follow-up question there, actually, and it's something that I hear a lot from young people, not just in the Bronx, but all over the city, and that is the desire for more support for pathways to entrepreneurship. And I'm asking about this in part because when I think about economic mobility, I think one of the other pieces of that puzzle is what more the city and the state can be doing to help more small businesses grow, to help more entrepreneurs that are just starting out to be able to succeed. You know, we've written about that at NYCHA, and that actually helped lead to a private foundation starting a pilot program to help NYCHA entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses. But that's just one pilot program right now. We've looked at extensively at opportunities to help more of our great small businesses grow, the ones that are ready to grow but need access to capital and technical assistance to get there so they can hire more people and have more of an economic impact. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about, and certainly around entrepreneurship for young people, where a lot of folks say, that's what I want. So I'd love your thoughts, the city or the state, maybe just one idea for those of you who want to throw one out there to support entrepreneurship, access to capital, small business development.
I'll just go really quickly. So the first year we were in council, myself, Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Riley, and Councilmember Farrah Lewis, we actually got the mayor to give us $1 million to start an entrepreneur initiative across the 5 boroughs. So we've had almost 500 kids in the last 3 years graduate and get money to start up their small businesses. We've worked with programs like Aim High, Jamila Davis, who have what is it called? I think it's like Hyped Up or something like that. But they've really been working to start young entrepreneurships. And once they finish the program, they actually get seed money to start their business. And one of the young people who graduated actually opened a restaurant in Jersey last year. So we've really been trying to invest, and that's one of the programs that we're definitely trying to get more money in. But it started with $1 million, and hopefully by the time I leave, we're at $5 million. So, that's what we're trying to do.
I wanted to put a plug in, and I think, well, 2 things, and I think it cuts across entrepreneurship and just workforce development on the whole, is sustained mentorship and making sure that young people are connected to mentors, not just as one-shot deals, like I'm gonna have a workshop or a conversation with someone and learn from their trajectory, but ongoing mentorship. It's not legislative as much as it is programmatic, but I think we need to have more mentors with young people, explaining and talking to them ongoing, monthly, every 6 months, to have a conversation on how did they do it. Networking is so important. Your network is your net worth. That's a phrase, but I think it really is true, because your networks move you forward. They get you the job. They get you the conversation that you otherwise wouldn't have. The other thing I'll say is, I worked in diplomacy before this. Micro-lending works. Micro-lending works all around the world. It can work in New York City, whether we're talking about seed funding or ongoing funding for the future for entrepreneurs. They need that boost in order to build their business.
That's important. I have sort of leaned into this space through MWBEs. The city and the state are some of the probably the biggest customer that you can find in New York. The state, this year, we're poised to have a $252 billion budget. Last year, we spent $3 billion with MWBEs. And when you look into that number further, the group that is sort of benefiting the most from being designated as an MWBE are white woman-owned firms. And the disparities really deepen when you look at how much money is getting to people who are Black and brown. Now, amazingly enough, the city has a much smaller budget, but managed to spend $6 billion of that. It's like $182 billion, your budget, $182 billion around there, and they spent $6 billion, double what the state was able to do. Again, have some of the same issues where the disparities deepen when you kind of look under the hood of who's the MWBEs, but there is real power there, because when you have businesses that are owned by people who look like us and come from our communities, they're just statistically more inclined to hire people who look like us and come from our communities and open those doors and pathways to entrepreneurship. Many, many, many entrepreneurs get their start in their industry because they had a job in that industry. And so one of the things that I've really been focused on is making sure that we're leveraging public dollars as much as we can to make sure that those investments are going directly back into businesses that are coming from our communities and doing work in our communities. Because when we think about contracting, I think on the city and state level, and you think about sort of who's a contractor, you're thinking about construction, you're thinking about these bigger things, and there are programs that are working to diversify those fields, but there is also all kinds of spending. There are cleaning services, there are food services, there are security services, there are all kinds of services that don't require this sort of pedigree, that just really require an effort. And so I've been working hard to make sure the state makes that effort, and we're slowly but surely getting there, but I think that that's also another space where we need to radically reimagine. If we continue to work at the fringes, we're just not going to see the sort of large-scale impact that we need.
Thanks, Assemblymember. Let me ask a question, Assemblymember Reyes. You know, I don't know if this is still true, but I certainly read once that you were a clarinetist. Is that, you still play clarinet?
I can still play.
I don't know if you brought it today. I was going to set you up to perform.
I gave my clarinet to my son. He's playing the clarinet now.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. So the reason I brought that up is because, you know, it seems to me like one of the Bronx's greatest strengths is culture. And Councilmember, you brought it up early, you know, the cultural vibrancy of the Bronx. I'd love to hear one idea from any of you or each of you around what you think not only the state could do or the city, but leaders across the city or the mayor or the next mayor could do to support a healthy and vibrant cultural ecosystem in the Bronx.
I mean, do I go first?
I was gonna say, just because you're an artist assembly member doesn't mean you have to go first, but go for it if you're ready.
Look, I think when we look at our public schools, there has been over the years a systemic disinvestment in the arts. And that is kind of the pipeline for a lot of our cultural institutions and the fabric of the culture in the city and the state. I graduated from the High School of Art and Design. I don't work in art, but I absolutely attribute everything that I learned there to me being a more rounded person and me being able to understand other cultures, other people. Definitely it helps you calculate better when you can read music, when you can, do art, all of those things. And I think a lot of our young people are missing that fundamental education. We should be prioritizing the arts in our educational spaces. And then I think there are small groups in our communities, nonprofit groups that are doing incredible work to keep culture alive. Like, for example, when I think about, in my neighborhood, I have like the Bangladeshi Academy of Fine Arts, right? A very small group that teaches the language, that teaches the dance, that teaches the art. We should be funding those small groups because we have large immigrant populations, second, third generation immigrants, children of immigrants that I think benefit from keeping that culture alive. It enriches us as a city and as communities. So we should be funding them more readily. And I try to do that with our discretionary funds, but that's always a fight on the state level, and I'm sure for the city as well. And I think that's something that we can try to put more emphasis on.
Yeah, I think that we too often think about the arts as a luxury, as this sort of other thing that's extra. But one of the incredible benefits of going through the programming at the Point CDC as a young person is that they harness the power of the arts as a vehicle for so many other things. And so I was in a social justice program, but we used arts to tell the story, to learn about our community, to communicate about issues that were important. The Point CDC, I'm gonna just plug the Point right now because they're an incredible place. If you haven't been, you should visit. But they also have a circus program for their after-school kids who, that's run by folks who work with Cirque du Soleil. And it's funny because my mom sort of tells this story about how when I was younger, and I couldn't appreciate it then, but when I was younger, I was a teenager, every year they invite kids from the South Bronx to go see the Cirque du Soleil. And when I was younger, I'd say, oh, I don't go to the circus with animals. I only go to Cirque du Soleil. And that's a ridiculous concept to think about. And when you're a kid, you can't really appreciate how absurd that is. But that's amazing that kids in the Bronx are able to be exposed to something so powerful. And that's really what I hope for all kids in the Bronx, right? That you can't appreciate how special that is because it does feel normal and it does feel commonplace to you. And so I think what we need to do better is invest in all of the organizations, and I think that's true for every organization, right? WEDCO is here, and that's true for WEDCO. YMPJ, Bronx River Alliance, sorry? Casita Maria, of course, yes, exactly. There's so many incredible organizations that center the arts because it's such a part of our culture and use it as a vehicle for development in other ways. And that is the fight that we're always waging. And I think that we're always trying to get people to appreciate that it's not a luxury. It really is a necessity, but it is, in fact, a privilege and shouldn't be.
So just really quickly, I'll just add, I don't know if folks know last year the mayor cut the cultures program, which meant that city council fought like hell to get it put back in the budget. So I just want to make sure we start there because he likes to take credit that he cut it and put the money back. But no, we did that because we said we would not pass a budget without making sure cultures were okay. And that's important. And that is a council that says, we see you as being important. We also do CASAs, right? We partner with cultural organizations to go into the schools to actually give programming to our young people. It is important because we know that young people need it to thrive. I think it's so important. I have a multicultural advisory board in my office. My president is right there, Daniel. He is the president of my multicultural. He goes everywhere I go, apparently. But we love you, Daniel. But we have a multicultural advisory board because one of the things that I truly believe is when we're thinking about, we have such a diverse borough. And we often focus on our differences and never focus on our similarities. And so having this multicultural board, we had a multicultural fest last year. Yes, Daniel, it was amazing. And where different folks from different cultures performed, they had food, and it was all these different things, and they had artwork displayed. And those are the things that we need to be investing in and making a priority. And so, you know, I think that we need to make sure one of the things that we're looking to do at council is expand the CASAs because each council member, I think we get 10 CASAs each. I have 55 schools in my district, so that means we have over 40 schools who aren't getting that opportunity to have a cultural institution go into their school, right? I also host days where we are able to go to the Botanical Garden, the Bronx Zoo, which is here in the Bronx. And believe it or not, we have young people in the Bronx who've never visited. Never visited. I have young people the Bronx Museum, Children's Museum, the Bronx delegation fought to have them be part of the CASAs. Like she said earlier, we were the last folks to get a children's museum, and they did not want to make it part of the SIGs, which we were like, that is unacceptable. We fought to make that happen because we understand that cultures is a necessity. It is not an extracurricular activity. It is not something that can be put on the back burner because it's what grows your imagination and continue to thrive. So we take it as serious as we can and make sure that we're putting our money where our mouth is.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I think I should point out that the preliminary budget does cut about $90 million from culturals again this year. So
yeah, we know. We saw it.
Your work is cut out for you. Let me ask something that I think doesn't get enough attention in the Bronx. Quick question, and then we can turn over to our audience soon as well. And that is, the Bronx is aging. You know, the older adult population in the Bronx has grown 35% over the past decade. You know, far faster than the population overall. We have an older borough than ever. And I'd love to ask all of you or any of you that want to jump in.
But still the youngest borough.
Sorry, one more time.
But still the youngest borough.
Yeah, but still the youngest borough. That's absolutely right. So I want to ask all of you, you know, what is one idea that you may have around harnessing the energy in the Bronx's older adult population or addressing some of the very real challenges that grow as the borough ages? Any thoughts you have about what the city or the state should be doing or the mayor should be doing to support an aging borough?
Well, I think one, you know, we should support our seniors to age in place, to age where they are. I think a lot of our seniors, whether they're homeowners or they're renters, they can't move in and out of their buildings or their homes. We need to provide repair programs, the ability for them to access funds so that they can keep up, and you know, whether they're in a wheelchair or they're walking with a cane, that they can move in and out of where they live. We have a lot of senior centers in my district, a lot of NYCHA senior centers. We should be investing in those, making sure that seniors can access programming to keep them engaged. I've seen a lot of seniors move to becoming depressed, for example, because they're not engaged. So we need a lot of senior programming for our aging population.
Yeah, just to add, I think exactly what you said, we need to make sure that seniors are able to age in place. And we also need to not only invest in programming, but also the same thing I said about the young people, we need to ask them what they want. I know we've been really trying to do more stuff around tech for our seniors who really want to, whether they want to get on social media or they want to do Google searches, we've been trying to do that. We're actually going to be having an intergenerational dance, silent disco at Wendell T. Foster Park at the end of the month because I have a senior advisory board board and also have a youth advisory board, where they came together and said they want to have a party. And I was like, sure. And so we really are looking for opportunities to bring young people and seniors together, because I think that's a huge disconnect in a place that we're not harnessing, to have our seniors really leading the way and letting our young people know their history and finding opportunities to put them in the same room. So everyone is invited here. It's going to be, I believe it's just February 27th at Wendell T. Foster Park from 3 to 6, where we're going to have an interracial dance. We have multiple DJs. The seniors have picked their playlists, and young people have picked their playlists. So it's going to be a really good time. So hopefully all you guys can come out.
I love it. Intergenerational dance parties in public parks all over the 5 boroughs in 2025. I think that's a great idea.
I can only focus on my district, so.
I love that. And I have to say, that multi-generational party sounds like Orchard Beach in the summer, like the Salsa Fest, okay? You know, one thing that I think it's very interesting is that we've built all this senior housing. When I walked in, you were talking about all this affordable housing that we built, and we built all this senior housing. A lot of the senior housing that we build tends to be studio apartments, which is an aversion for a lot of our seniors. They don't want to downsize into a studio. But I think, you know, when you think about the aging population, you think about the type of communities that we have here in the Bronx, we need to be building multi-generational housing, because it is very important for us to make sure that seniors are we're not just putting them in a place by themselves. A lot of our seniors live with their kids, with their grandchildren. It's part of the fabric of who we are, but we don't make those spaces that accommodate those families. You know, on the back end, it saves us money in care and home care services. It really focuses and fights back social isolation. We should be prioritizing those things, but we don't think that way. And that's something that I would like to see us, maybe as a pilot program, you know, try to address and see how that can work, and we can perhaps upscale a program like that.
I just want to add, I think I would love for us to work together as city and state to push back on HPD, because if you look at their term sheets, that's part of the problem, where they are building a lot of these studio apartments, which have been my fight, where they're like, oh, those are for seniors. And I keep telling them seniors do not want to live in a studio apartment, but they do not want to build 3 and 4 bedroom apartments. So I think this is something, especially in the Bronx, we can definitely be united on, and have all these lovely people in the audience help us and support us as we have that fight for intergenerational housing.
Well,
And it's how you also make sure young people are having a hard time finding housing as well. And their incomes just aren't going far enough. But if they're living with their grandparents, right, they can provide support, they can provide companionship, and they can share in the housing costs, right? And it's a way for us to tackle several problems at the same time.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And I want to ask one last quick question, then we'll turn it over to our audience, only because we did get started a couple minutes late, and we just want to hear as many of your ideas as possible. And this is a bigger, broader one, without so much focus, just to say we're in a mayoral election year. You know, there are candidates right now running all over the city. They have some of their own ideas. They're also looking for ideas. Whoever the next mayor is, whether it's our current mayor or another contender, what's one idea that you have for the chief executive of New York City? Some idea that maybe the state can't do on its own, or that the council might not be able to do on its own, but that you think the next mayor of New York City, whoever they are, should run with?
I think a lot of our economic policies disincentivize economic mobility, and one of them are the benefits programs and the thresholds. And means testing on the whole. And I feel like we do not do enough to get people sort of on a slow term off of a benefit program into a job. And what ends up happening, often I hear, is that, oh, well, I don't want to make more money because then I'm going to lose my benefit. I'm going to lose this, I'm going to lose that. So it disincentivizes people to get off benefits and to actually, you know, start working in a full-time job. And so it works against us. And so I'd love to see the city and the state potentially work together to create a bridge program where, for example, for 1 year, you still keep your benefit. You can stay on your benefit, and then you slowly ride off into the sunset.
I have so many ideas.
That's a great idea,
but I will start with the one that I've been talking about for the last 3 years, which is procurement reform. Our nonprofits cannot continue to take the burden of not being paid. It just cannot happen. This has been, I mean, a lot of these are my people because this is all I ever talk about, but we cannot continue to ask providers to provide services to our constituents and residents of New York City and not pay them. It's bad enough that the contracts are not even affordable, right? We're not even at a place where I can yell about the wages and all those things. I just need them to get paid. I have organizations who haven't been paid for contracts since 2022. We're in 2025. It is a serious issue, and we have a lot of folks who are talking about a lot of things. But if we do not pay our nonprofits, which are the backbone of our city will collapse. And not only do I need to put the pressure on the mayor, but I need to put the pressure on our nonprofit groups. We got to fight back because we can't continue to sit down and take this because they work so hard, and I literally have EDs calling me on a regular basis saying I might not be able to make payroll. Or they're taking out lines of credit and paying on the interest that could be used for programming because the city has not paid them. So this is a really serious issue that no one kind of talks about. Everyone talks around it. But if this does not get fixed, we're not only going to see crucial organizations that are doing work for everyday New Yorkers collapse, the city will collapse at the same time because we can't do the work that they talk about. I say this all the time. Elected officials talk about the work that the nonprofits do. We are not out there doing the food distributions. We're not out there running the programs. They are, which means they should be paid.
I am very passionate about moving towards free MTA for New York City residents. And we started to do that on the state level with a free bus pilot. And that was really built off of some of the things that we saw happen during COVID. Do you guys remember when buses were free during COVID? The very next day, when we reinstated the fares, ridership went down by 23%. That tells me that the cost of the bus is prohibitive for people. When you look at violence that happens on buses, I'm going to talk to you just about buses for right now. 80% of violent episodes on buses are connected to fare collection. Get rid of the fare, buses get safer. And when we did the bus pilot, the free bus pilot with the 5 lines, one in every borough, we saw that the buses got faster. People and drivers, workers felt safer. Everything was better. And so I don't have to make the arguments, I'm sure we all know them, around how giving people access to more mobility is better for everyone in that it grows the economy, it makes everything better for folks. But this is an issue I'm particularly passionate about representing the Bronx because all data that you look at says the poorer you are, the longer you commute to work. That's an issue for people in the Bronx because we're the poorest borough, right? So we have the longest commute, and what does that mean? That's connected to everything else. That's less time you spend with your families. That's connected to the fact that kids coming from communities like ours hear 1 million less words by the time they go to school than their wealthier counterparts. Why? Because their parents aren't home. Because their parents are spending all their time on a subway system that doesn't work. And so I'm really passionate about meaningfully investing in building a world. We have a world-class transit system, but one that serves all New Yorkers with reliable service, that is fast, and that is free.
I mean, Amarita, that was a great idea. This is such a loaded question because there's so many things, right? I think one of the biggest challenges that we have in this city and in the state is out-migration. And people are leaving because it's just too expensive to live here. So anything that a mayor can do to make it more affordable to live in the city of New York, we are on board with, right? And I think providing home ownership opportunities is so important because that is how folks can build that generational wealth. It's one thing to spend your life paying rent, than to be able to buy something here in the city that you live and you love, and be able to kind of build that wealth and be able to pass something on to your children. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think any plan that does that, I can get behind. And just to add something about transportation, you know, in the Bronx, the free bus was great, right? And my thing was, I want the free bus in my neighborhood. And we need to expand transportation options for Bronxites. When we did the Bronx redesign, the Bronx bus redesign plan, I think it fell short in really looking at transit deserts, particularly here in the Bronx, in the East Bronx and Northern Bronx and South Bronx, and connecting the East and the West Bronx. I think we can do better So I want a mayor to look at how Bronxites get around. They're talking about that Interborough Express that's connecting Queens and Brooklyn. That railway runs to the Bronx. We should be able to connect that to the Bronx so people can cross over to Queens without having to go to Manhattan. I think, looking at things like that, I would love to see a mayor really consider those options.
The last thing that I have to say, because it would be a dereliction of duty if I didn't, is that we need a mayor to, and I will openly campaign and endorse anybody, I'm saying this on the record, who is committed to this, who will dismantle the issue that we have in the hub and in East Harlem, where we have such a high concentration of clinics that are offering support to folks that are struggling with substance abuse, that it creates its own set of issues for the community. That is something that the city could fix today if they wanted to. Those services are critically important, and all New Yorkers need them, and all New Yorkers use them, so they should be spread all over New York.
It's all the boroughs, because I'm going to tell you that right now. All of them, because Staten Island, they ain't doing nothing over there. Don't get me started. I just wanted to add something really quickly, even around the transportation, because I know we had Chauncey talking about access to the waterways and those things. That's one of the things that I've been talking about a lot. And one of the things that when we're talking about transportation, we only have one ferry line in the Bronx. Brooklyn, one of my colleagues has 6 ferry stops in his district. 6 ferry stops. And one of the things they say that they've been saying and pushing back is saying that low-income people don't take the ferry. And that is one of the reasons that they've given. And they're like, yeah, we've done the data, your district. And I'm like, so let's be clear. I have told them with the Yankees alone, who I'm not a fan of because that's my district and they drive me crazy. But with the Yankees alone, with that influx of people, we would actually generate more money than the 6 stops in this one council member's district. But clearly, it is not about access and affordability. It is about who they want to have access to these things. And so one of the things that I was able to do in the city, yes, in negotiations, was get the city to commit to doing an actual study for the Harlem River Drive so that we can get a ferry on the Harlem River Drive that would go all the way up from Riverdale all the way to Brooklyn. And so that's something that I'm working really hard on. And with those commitments, also saying, if you're going to put a ferry here, we also need waterfront access, right? What does that look like? So that's one of the things that we need to even be talking about. And so any mayor that's coming here, these are the things that I'm bringing up. How are we making sure that we're fixing the disparities that we have in community around transit deserts? Because High Bridge, if you live in High Bridge, you know it's a transit desert. And so these are things that I'm very committed to. And any mayor that is coming in, those are the questions I'm asking about.
And you should be able to transfer to the ferry with your MTA.
Oh, yes. Yeah, me and Amanda.
Wouldn't be an issue if it were free.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember. So we have a few minutes left, really just a few. I'd love to turn it back over to our audience one last time for questions. Please keep them brief so we can get to as many as possible. We'll start at the very back. Rachel, back row. And then we'll come down to the front, okay? And John, you're on the other side. You guys see a question, hand up. Or John, if you want to come down, right over here. I see a hand up.
There's one more lady in the back.
There we go. Yep.
Hi there. I'm Danny Lopez. I'm from Highbridge, funnily enough. I am co-founder of Lulo, and we're backed by Robin Hood Foundation, and we're specifically working along all these lines of food access, benefits access, tech and innovation. And we're working to help families turn over $1 billion in unredeemed federal benefits into food on their tables and revenues for locals' economies. So I want to ask you both for your support at the city and state level to help us get our free tools out to families. We launched in September, and we co-designed this tool with over 125 WIC families, many of whom are here in the Bronx, Morrisania, and in Highbridge, because they were so difficult to actually jump through all of the hoops to figure out what you can and can't buy when the government tells you what brand, flavor, and container size. This is a burden that families can't afford. And so we're, again, over 2,000 families. Our early impact is showing over 5% benefits increase. So with 25,000 families, that's over $1.5 million in federal money coming straight to families and local economies. So whether it's the partnerships through CUNY, working with health and hospitals, and actually forcing something to go through with New York State Department of Health, there's over 440,000 WIC participants in the state, 220,000 are in New York City, and we don't get the resources that we need. We can't even do WIC enrollment through HRA because of Albany. So I want to work with y'all to make sure that we're getting the food for our babies. This is all money left on the table otherwise.
Thank you so much. Let me just go ahead and take one more question over here. We'll try to come get one more at the front, and we're probably going to have to stop. So just please do keep it brief, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Greetings, you all. Appreciate you all. I'm George Nunez, founder and CEO of Bronx Tech Hub. So I'm building a tech ecosystem in the Bronx focused on workforce development, education, entrepreneurial access. And as Danny mentioned, we're doing the work, right? We have hosted Bronx Tech Week. We held a Bronx Tech Fair at Fordham University, first one ever in the city and in the Bronx. So we would love to work with you all in terms of the program that we are hosting. And also the fellowships, right? Because as you guys mentioned, there's so many things that the New York City is spending on in regards to tech when we think about AI, climate tech, and biotech. But none of those opportunities and none of those programs are trickling down to the Bronx, which is why we're creating fellowships to help our people in workforce development and get access to those startups as well and companies. Not to mention, February 25th, we're hosting an event at Sankofa House to talk about the latest trends that are going on in the Bronx, whether if it's AI, climate tech, biotech, and cybersecurity. We would love for you all to come out. And we're also hosting a climate tech roundtable to talk about the new opportunities in the Bronx in regards to climate tech and how our people can get access to those opportunities as well. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, George. I wanted to get I already called out third row, the front here, so we could just grab a microphone down here. And then in the very back row, I think you're there, Rachel, and that's probably all the time we have. Please do keep your questions brief. We want to get to as many as we can, but we might only have time for one or two left. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much for having this discussion, but I think the real issue is the idea for me is really about reparations, right? And how that's really going to solve our issue. We could say, oh, we need this, we need that, but if we don't have a real serious conversation about reparations as was owed to us, then we're going to always be in this situation, and that's for real.
Thank you. And then back row. Thank you.
Hi, I just want to put things on your radar. So, food. I heard the conversation about food. The Bronx is the location of the largest food hub in the country. They keep saying it's a food desert. Someone introduced me to the term food apartheid, because who's making these decisions and why we don't have no food? The other thing, housing. A lot of times single fathers have challenges finding housing. I think someone needs to look at that. And there's also something called the Earned Income Housing Tax Credit, which excludes you from the housing if you're a full-time student. I've had to personally help students have to choose between an education and staying in their homes. I've heard a lot of talk about arts. The Bronx Art Council, that's in the Bronx, funds, if not all, the art and cultural institutions, but they don't get funded. They're not getting funded by elected officials who often like to use the institutions to have events and things of that nature. So, and Viviana just left. I have a business card if you are interested. And yeah, that's it.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. Does anybody have a question? Because I want to respect our elected officials' time. Okay, yes, sir. The blue polo microphone's coming to you. Just want to make sure folks really have questions for our elected officials that we get to those. Go for it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all elected officials. It's great to see my councilwoman and my mentor, Assemblywoman Reyes. Of which I have a question. Earlier in the panel, you was mentioning money for non-for-profits, which Councilwoman Stevens didn't mention, not just now, but even previous in seated council chamber. Non-for-profits like my job, Bridge Bills Community Partnership. But what are you doing, Reyes, and Albany to invest more in non-for-profits?
We love a question. Thank you for the question, Daniel. It's good to see you. Well, we are in the state. We are currently in our state budget process. And the way the budget process works is the governor puts forward an executive budget, and we are allowed to make changes kind of within that framework. And right before we got here, we were conferencing part of the budget, the social services aspect of it, and all of that. We are right now pushing back on cuts to certain programs, where we are proposing additions to certain programs. Another thing that we do as the Bronx delegation is that the speaker gives us a pot of money, and we have numerous nonprofits come before the Bronx delegation. You can all avail yourselves of that opportunity if you reach out to our delegation chair, which is Assemblymember Dinowitz, and set up a meeting. well, it's a little
Full for
late.
this year.
It's full for this year, but then what happens is that we
and not the council member Dinowitz. He's the delegation co-chair for
right,
the
the
city council.
assembly member
Both
Dinowitz.
of the Dinowitzes are delegation chair.
And then based on our pot of money, and the ask that individual nonprofits have, we try to then figure out how we can fund the most out of those groups. Some groups, some nonprofits get pots of money through different pots based on the kind of work that they do. For example, you can get money through DOH or Department of State, or depending on what your focus is. And lastly, I would say towards June, we all get a little bit of discretionary money that we can then spend within our district, and we give some of our nonprofits. So I try to do that with our schools and nonprofits that provide services to people in our district, schools, so forth.
Have a round of applause for this amazing panel. Come on, we can do better than that. These are our elected officials. I want to thank all of you. You know, we put out a report last year with 50 ideas for creating a stronger and more equitable Bronx. I think I heard 100 ideas today. So thank you all for sharing. Thank you for this great discussion. And I want to give another big thanks to Verizon and to April for supporting this and making today possible. Thanks, Verizon. And I want to end, there was one last idea we actually heard from April, which I think is a good one. She said, we have such a great group of people sharing ideas today. Let's get a selfie with everybody from the stage so we can capture this. All these folks from the Bronx coming together to share ideas. So if everybody can bear with us, and if I could ask our panelists to kind of move up a little bit, we're going to try to take a selfie of the entire room. But thanks so much for being here today.